together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of all the hearts of all persons and estate within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malou Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Terry Long, Miss Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Burke, Dr. Brown Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Miss Morrison, Miss Nita, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Morgan, no, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright, Mr. Clark.
Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: the report of the University of the West Indies, Chancellor's Commission on Governance of the University of the West Indies, dated July 2020, and appendix with appendices A to N to the report, and certified appropriation account for head 72,000, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the year 2018-2019.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas it is stipulated in the standing orders of the House of Representatives at Order number 32A1 that the time allotted for sectoral debates shall be 2 days per week, being Tuesdays and Wednesdays over a period of 6 weeks in each year. And whereas this year's sectoral debate commenced on the 20th day of April 2021, and the stated period will therefore elapse within the week beginning on the 30th day of May 2021. Be it resolved that this Honourable House approve the suspension of the standing orders to enable this year's sectoral debate to continue beyond the stipulated deadline. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I give notice that on the expiration of 21 days, I will ask the questions that have been tabled, 3 questions that have been tabled in my name. Of the Minister of Education.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier. Standing orders be suspended to enable the House Leader to take the notice, the motion, notice of which she gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion of which I gave earlier be approved. The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Motion approved. Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this point, Madam Speaker, we will continue the sectoral debate. And today our presenters are the Honourable Robert Montague, Minister, MP, and Minister of Transport and Mining, and he will be followed by Dr. Maurice Guy, MP, Opposition Spokesperson on Health and Wellness. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Robert Montague, Minister of Transport and Mining.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, particularly as this marks my 10th year speaking in this debate. I cannot continue, Madam Speaker, without first thanking the Almighty, from whom all blessings flow, and without His strength and guidance, I could not be here. I want to thank the Most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness for the confidence he has placed in me, and he has entrusted me with a ministry that is critical to this nation's survival and growth. The Ministry of Transport and Mining today is the #1 earner of foreign exchange and keeps our people and others moving in all aspects of economic, academic, and social life daily. Madam Speaker, I thank my colleagues on both sides of this House for their support, advice, and guidance. I thank you, Madam Speaker, for your steady hands but graceful dialect as you guide these proceedings weekly, and to the acting clerk and the staff, a big thank you. To the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Dr. Janine Dawkins, and her staff in the Ministry of Transports and Mining, thanks for the privilege of working alongside you. To my Minister of State, William J.C. Hutchinson, thank you for your partnership and support in heading this ministry. To my personal staff, security detail, and close advisors, a big thank you. And to my brothers and sisters, children, to Kadian, and other members of my family, you have not only tolerated me, but sacrificed family time, birthdays, anniversaries, and important events. You have been my safe harbor, and I am grateful for your love and support. To the people of Western St. Mary, who have given me the privilege to be here, I value your confidence, love, and support. I am here representing all of Western St. Mary, not only the 9,700 that voted for me, but all of Western St. Mary. I thank my workers, my executive and management team for their work and worth, and for the efforts that allowed me to have the third highest number of votes in the island. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge the worth and work of our healthcare workers, security forces, and members of the mining industry, and all our hardworking and productive members of the transport sector. They have been heroes in these trying times. Today, thousands of students were transported by our transport workers to examination centers to sit the PEP. We wish for them all the very best and all the successes in the world. Let me pause to acknowledge those in the mining and transport sector who would have passed over the year. My condolences to their families, and may their souls rest in eternal peace. Madam Speaker, as I view and appreciate the enormity of my task in helping Jamaica recover stronger, I have asked the good Lord not to lighten my load, but rather to strengthen my arms. For with God's grace and blessing, along with our Prime Minister's visionary leadership, we are assured that we will overcome all challenges. In this assertion, I am confident. Madam Speaker, the mining sector remains buoyant, resilient, and strong in the midst of this pandemic. I acknowledge the opposition spokesman on mining, the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, who has offered his advice and support, not only at the Mining Council, but generally, as I consult with him regularly. Madam Speaker, the Mining Council was his idea, but I implemented it. We both understand the priceless privilege of serving the Jamaican people. He does not only come and oppose and oppose and oppose, but he gives suggestions, recommendations, and alternatives. I respect and welcome his contribution and recommend to others this professional yet cordial relationship. Madam Speaker, there are approximately 490 licensed mining operations in Jamaica today. This contributes to approximately 3% of our GDP and earned the most foreign exchange for the country in 2020. I'm coming to you, In 2019, mining and quarrying accounted for 51% of Jamaica's domestic export earnings. The Mining and Geology Division continues to exceed our expectations. The process of granting new licenses, renewals, and inspections have vastly improved, and I pay tribute to the Commissioner of Mines and the staff for their exceptional work. The Jamaica Bauxite Institute continues to maintain its world-class standards and work within the philosophy of life after bauxite. Our community engagements remain strong, and we have seen MPs implement various projects with the funds assigned for the people of their constituencies. We have seen schools, health care facilities, roads expanded and repaired. Scholarships and tablets have been given out to students, as well as agricultural support. These MPs, Madam Speaker, are really using the funds for worthwhile projects, not like some who save it up. We have finalized an agreement with the Jamaica Castor Oil Growers Association to undertake a program to kickstart this industry. Our castor oil is in great demand worldwide, and we have seen others making products and branding them as Jamaican castor oil. You need to use some, Dr. Guy. We intend to utilize our reclaimed mine-out lands to plant things such as these. And, Madam Speaker, I'm going to have to cut my speech short because I understand the member from Central St. Mary is going to speak, and I need to give him 15 minutes. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited owns 51% of the New Day Noranda operations in St. Ann, the Reynolds Pier, and the former Reynolds Industrial Complex at Lidford in St. Ann. We will therefore continue to maximize revenue from our assets. On this note, we are expanding the use of the Reynolds Pier in Ocho and are carefully separating the crew side from the industrial side. We are developing a water project as the demand for high alkaline water has increased, and we have 2 high alkaline springs that we are seeking to develop to meet this demand. Along with the Member of Parliament of North East St. Ann, Marsha Smith, we are moving to regularize a section of lands that has been squatted. Madam Speaker, our partners in the New Day plant are behind on some of their commitments. However, these funds belong to the people of Jamaica, and we intend to use all legal means to collect. We have agreements and we have laws, and we intend, with the advice of the Attorney General's chambers, to use them. Never forget, Madam Speaker, that we are a country of laws. We assure our partners of our highest considerations, but the approximately $2.8 million that is owed to the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited must and will be collected. Our partners clearly understand that Jamaica is a country of laws, and this ministry carefully guards the people's assets. Overall, our records show that our partners owe another $14 million to the Ministry of Finance, in addition to the $2.8 million owed to the Jamaica Bauxite Mining. We are in support of the Ministry of Finance in doing what's necessary to collect the people's money for bauxite already shipped. Additionally, later this year, when it is legally allowed, we intend to renegotiate the establishment agreement. That is, we intend to maximize on the earnings from this vital industry. As a matter of fact, we are moving to audit the operations in St. Ann and the section overseas. The Clarendon Alumina Production Limited, CAP, is another critical player in our bauxite industry. We owed approximately $132 million on a loan that was entered into by others a long time ago at extremely high interest rates and unfavorable terms for the people of Jamaica. Our Minister of Finance, and I hear other ministers branding him as Godfather, but our Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, the godfather of the Ministry of Transport and Mining, has paid it off in full, and we are working to pay off another working capital loan of some $54 million to our partners. As a matter of fact, the first installment on the working capital loan has been paid. We have also triggered an audit of the operations of Jamalco to ensure that the people of Jamaica are getting what is rightfully due. Madam Speaker, our partners cannot be making money and owning 55% of the shares, while CAP owns 45% and is not making any money. Something seems to be wrong. The government from time to time has to borrow funds in order to help to fund the operations. We want to know how the expenses are broken down and allocated. In addition, we are moving to regularize the operations at Jamalco by incorporating the entity. We have a joint venture agreement and we want to formalize the arrangements along strict commercial lines. It will either sink or swim on its own, but the people of Jamaica must no longer be asked to subsidize the operations. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, our chairman of CAP has written to our valid partners, informing them that we are ready to close the deal on incorporation. As we conclude a few minor items with them, we will then forward the agreement to the Attorney General's chambers for review and then sign. CAP and the Ministry of Transport and Mining are ready to sign the agreement for incorporation, and we remain hopeful that our partners and other agencies are equally ready. Madam Speaker, it would be remiss of me to conclude the mining aspect of this speech without touching on some other important matters. Madam Speaker, we started the mining training school in order to train persons involved in the industry so as to lift the standards and transform it into a more sustainable sector. I wish to again pay tribute to the member from Central Clarendon, the Honourable Michael Lester Henry, for this idea and the hard work he did in laying this foundation. The training has started and it is being delivered with the assistance of the Council of Community Colleges of Jamaica. Excelsior Community College has led on this and we thank them. Importantly, we have done 2 courses on quarry management already. In addition, Madam Speaker, the University of Technology, our homegrown university, is starting a degree program in mining this August. We encourage all who have an interest to enroll. On this note, we wish to thank the chair of the Quarries Advisory Committee, all the consultants, committee members, and the staff at Mines and Geology, and all who work tirelessly to get us here. Madam Speaker, as we develop our bauxite industry over the years, in many instances, families were relocated, given new homes and new lands, while their titled lands were taken in order to facilitate mining activities. Many of these persons have been waiting for decades to get a land title for the new lands they now occupy. The process has been slow over the years. We intend to use, for the first time, the Bauxite and Alumina Industry Special Provisions Act to speed up this land titling process by using the power of vesting orders contained in the Act. These powers, Madam Speaker, were always used to assist the companies. This government led by Andrew Holness, this caring government, in order to correct the wrongs and injustices of the past, has decided to use it for our people, our citizens. And I will quote a gentleman that the member from South West St. Catherine knows very well, for the first time at last, Michael Manley. Indeed, Madam Speaker, the Minister of State, William J.C. Hutchinson, has this important matter of one of his many areas of responsibility, and I must thank him for the work he is doing to ensure that families get their land titles. Another area the Minister of State has been focusing on is the preparation and tabling of annual and audited financial statements. For too long, entities have treated this important reporting tool with scant regard. We are moving within the ministry to have every entity and every agency current by the end of this financial year. It will no longer be tolerated. We're out of the 17 entities under the Ministry of Transport and Mining. We only have 1 that is current, 3 1 year behind, and 13 within 3 years. Madam Speaker, the Earthquake Unit continues to execute its duties with the level of professionalism that it is known for. The work of this unit assists others in the region and is well known and documented. We continue to offer critical support across the Caribbean, and our contribution to research helps to drive a better understanding and builds on the body of knowledge. Madam Speaker, energy accounts for approximately 30 to 40% of the cost of operations in the mining and quarrying industry. We have commenced a drive to look at an alternative energy mix that is cleaner, greener, and more sustainable. We are working with the Ministry of Energy as we look at various solutions and delivery methodologies to get us to where we need to be. So hydro, thermal, solar, wind, nuclear, biomass, and natural gas will all be looked at and studied to see what suits Jamaica best. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, maybe most House, there were some concerns by the good citizens in Trelawney about the boundaries of the Cockpit country. So, Madam Speaker, I drove down to Trelawney myself. I went into the area and I met with some experts in geology, mining, and development. These experts, Madam Speaker, I believe you know them all because they went to the University of Life and Experience in Trelawney. The ordinary citizen. Too many of us, Madam Speaker, claim that we speak on their behalf without consulting them. So I found myself in the Cockpit country and spent time listening, and I learned a lot. It was unfiltered, yet factual. I dutifully reported to the Ministry and Cabinet, and I also consulted with the political representatives. As a result, acting on the advice and direction of the Commissioner of Mines, as the law dictates, remember, we're a country of laws, we have modified SML 173. This change has resulted in approximately 6,000 hectares of land being removed from the original SML, but this will be replaced with additional lands to the company with SML 71. And SML 71 is adjacent to the east of where the company is currently mining in SML 165. I will take you there. By replacing what was removed, we have satisfied not only the provisions of the law, but the establishment agreement and the conditions of the license. Madam Speaker, our Prime Minister has led from the front on this matter, and his steadfast and steady hands have created balance between the concerns of the company and our agreement and the demands of the people, and the Prime Minister must be commended. Our Prime Minister took the bold step, Madam Speaker, to define the Cockpit country. No other Prime Minister took that action. None. And although he went through a long period of consultation and came up with a boundary which was wider than that was recommended by others, there still were concerns on the ground. The people of Trelawney, Madam Speaker, know their Prime Minister, and they know him very well. Yeah. The people of Trelawney know that their Prime Minister listens. They know that their Prime Minister heard their cry, and they know that he would respond. And respond he did. He gave them his commitment, and today I have announced that we have amended SML 173. Madam Speaker, our listening Prime Minister heard the concerns in St. Anne with regards to the Bengal development. So he has instructed us that we should begin talks with the developers to identify suitable lands with the same or better quality limestone, and we have begun preliminary talks with them. No decision or agreement has been reached, but we have indicated to them our intentions. Madam Speaker, our Prime Minister believes in and is a champion for the environment and will continue to balance lives and livelihood. Prime Minister, thank you for your leadership on these matters. Madam Speaker, there has been some talk lately about the possibilities of extracting rare earth elements from our red mud. It is a proven fact that our red mud possesses rare earth elements. It is the extraction of same that is of concern, especially the cost. The Jamaica Bauxite Institute is actively looking at new methodologies to do so, and we have not given up on this project. In addition, I have sought legal advice as to whether Jamaica has any rights to the new metals found in red mud being held in the United States. One thought is that the license granted was for bauxite, and our laws, the Mining Act, says if you have a license to mine one item and in the process you find another, you must immediately inform the commissioner, get his permission, and ultimately pay your royalty. Another school of thought is that once you have granted the license, the product is shipped outside of Jamaica, you have no rights to the residue. But regardless of which argument is right, we must all remember, Madam Speaker, that Jamaica, through the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited, owns 17.33% of the profit of the overseas entity. So anyway, we're going to profit. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, I want to inform you and members of this Honourable House of a recent development. Recent surveys by private sector interests have indicated that there exists potentially large deposits of rare earth elements at a location in Jamaica. Rare earth elements, Madam Speaker, as you know, are critical to the growth of the green sustainable economy worldwide. More testing is underway, and more updates will be made as soon as it is commercially advisable to do so, Madam Speaker. You will be made aware, sir. You know that you are my chief advisor. Madam Speaker, please permit me to go to the transport sector. Madam Speaker, I wish my relationship with the opposition spokesman on transport was better. We have tried and will continue to try to bring him into the present. Madam Speaker, please let him know that you don't have to oppose to be a good spokesman. Madam Speaker, let me remind him that the last young man from Manchester who did that is today in another place. Madam Speaker, may I urge the member from Northwest Manchester to look carefully at the new member from Central Manchester. Don't let her attractiveness stunt you. She's extremely bright and is a hard worker. She's not going to give up that seat. So, my Lord, we can find an equally bright and hard-working person for Northwest Manchester. Yes. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, we have a young man there. But because of his late entry, he did not make it the last time. Honourable member, let us put aside the parties and politics and come together and work for Jamaica. I'm trying with him. But as you are aware, Madam Speaker, the Mobile Metro Company started as a school bus service and has somehow lost its way. We intend to invest in new equipment and reorganize that company. Right now, the JUTC has taken over the management and is doing an operational audit. I met with the board and the workers, and we are advanced in discussion with the Ministry of Education and the local schools to form partnerships to continue the service, increase the revenue, as we have already put in place some cost-saving measures. And, Madam, as I speak about the workers, may I pause to pay tribute and to offer condolences to the family of Mr. George Fife, former General Secretary of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union. We must also acknowledge that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, certain measures were put in place that affected the revenue almost for a year. We could only carry seated passengers. Even a child in Mile Gully can tell you that that would have an effect on the bus fare collection. So when I hear people talking about the fare box has fallen, they need to check with the students at Mile Gully for an explanation. The JUT is having similar issues. However, we have started cost-saving measures. These have resulted in both the JUTC and Mobile Metro reducing their costs. We have reduced staff costs. We have longer delivery time for parts, as our suppliers are also affected by the pandemic, and the availability of shippers to get the parts here must be taken into consideration. We have enhanced connectivity through the provision of wireless facilities on over 400 buses. Importantly, we are also moving to diversify the available fuel types. We currently use diesel and CNG, and will be adding biodiesel and electricity soon. We have fitted the hydrofiltration system on 375 of our buses already, therefore reducing the need for some 6 oil changes per year to 1. We no longer store engine oil at our warehouses, and maybe that is why some people are upset, because it has reduced costs and pilferage. Notwithstanding the cost-saving measures being implemented, the company's bottom line has been significantly impacted by the absence of charters since April 2020. This was a healthy earner for the company. We used to have sometimes 20, 25 charters every weekend going to funeral. The Minister of Finance has reallocated the funds for the 50 new buses to the Ministry of Health in order to treat with the pandemic. This again is this is because there was a major reduction in economic activity, and we saw a revenue cut to the budget by over $73 billion. We are confident that as things improve, the funds will be back in place, and some of these new buses, Madam Speaker, will be electric buses. Madam Speaker, sacrifice and hard choices are necessary to keep Jamaica and Jamaicans safe during this pandemic. Furthermore, we offered free rides to our hard-working essential service staffers in response to the pandemic. I take this time to salute our workers and thank the workers at the JUTC and Mobile Metro for keeping our people moving while keeping themselves and their families safe. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Ultimate Tire Company continues to exceed expectations as we have expanded our distribution outlets and are seeking partnerships with more government and private sector partners. We are going to market for a new general manager, and the advertisement is already out. As for the Jamaica Railway Corporation, Madam, its workshop in Kingston has been restored, and a solar lighting project there has been completed, and we are moving to restart the school train service from Old Harbour and Linstead into Spanish Town. We are working with the Jamaica Heritage Trust to restore our station houses, especially the Old Harbour station. In partnership with the JUTC and the Ministry of Education, we are hoping to move our children from Old Harbour and Linstead into Spanish Town by train. Then the JUTC will pick them up and drop them off at the various schools in Spanish Town. In the afternoon, the reverse will take effect. Along with the students, teachers, parents, healthcare, and other essential workers will be prioritized for this service at first. Last Thursday, Madam Speaker, the train ran from Spanish Town to Linstead and back on a test run. This is not just talk. It's a clear demonstration of the will of this government to build back stronger. Madam Speaker, we are moving to create a safe and orderly system to take our children to and from schools. We are hopeful that we will be able to expand this over time. We will also have one train left in Kingston to move between downtown and Marcus Garvey Drive. to provide transportation and leisure trips, or to just give people the train experience. This will bring economic activities for the communities along the line, as the train will stop in these communities and allow persons to vend and offer other services. No big box stores will be courted. This is an opportunity for the little man. Only the people from these communities will be allowed to interact with the passengers. In addition, we want to rent out coaches to different businesses, so as you ride, you can shop. Can you imagine an ice cream, snack shop, pastry, souvenir, juice bar, hairdresser, sports bar, restaurant? As you move along, you can walk between coaches. You can stop and buy your cane and peanut, your natural juice and other items, and I understand that the Member of Parliament for Southwest is already training her people to make use of this opportunity. This is what we are working towards as we move to complete the work on the school train service. We are working with the Development Bank of Jamaica via an enterprise team headed by Mr. Howard Mitchell to offer a development lease to a bidder for the Mobay to Appleton line. We will soon go to market and we will update you as we go along, Madam Speaker. The Toll Authority of Jamaica is working to ensure that our toll roads continue to be up to international standards. The 2 escape lanes on the Edward Seaga Highway were recently redone and improved, as the authority found that they were not up to agreed standards. In addition, the end of that toll road in Miami Bay is of concern to many, as you end or begin a highway at a roundabout, and when you are exiting, you are coming downhill and do not have the right of way. We are in discussions with the NWA, the National Works Agency, to correct this, and a possible solution is far advanced. The authority, like you, Madam Speaker, anxiously awaits the extension of the Honourable P.J. Patterson Highway. Let us use this opportunity to thank Mr. Robin Levy, our hard-working toll regulator, as this year will be his final year as regulator, and I wish to place on record our thanks and appreciation. The Island Traffic Authority has a new Director General in Colonel Daniel Price. We are excited about the new plans that are in place. We will continue to build out the new structure of that body while we continue to implement innovative plans. The learner-driver road code test is doing well as we transition over time to full electronic testing. We anticipate that this will result in more persons appreciating our road code. We continue the solar lighting upgrades at depots and the digitalization of our records. Geofencing for vehicles that are to be examined is far advanced. So the days when a vehicle is in police custody or is in the pound, but suddenly get a fitness certificate, is soon coming to an end. In addition, the recent rotation of senior members was a well-needed change, as new ideas in new places are taking place. We are moving to acquire 4 driving simulators for phase 1 of providing simulators as a part of a yard test to ensure that people have control of the vehicle before going on the road. The networking of each depot is complete and they are all linked. Madam Speaker, the Maritime Authority of Jamaica continues to serve our seafarers with excellence. We're on the last lap of privatizing our ship registry, and we continue to work with the Development Bank and the Enterprise team to achieve this. Let me thank Mr. William Brown and the team for the work they are doing in this regard. We have received high praises for Jamaica facilitating crew changes for seafarers in the midst of the pandemic, and many families were appreciative, as not only Jamaicans were stuck at sea, and some Jamaicans were also stuck at home while they should have been on ships earning. We continue to use our ports and corridors to assist seafarers while the country earns. This Honourable House, Madam Speaker, amended the Shipping Act to incorporate the Maritime Labour Convention, finally giving protection to our hard-working seafarers and having our hospitality workers under the seafarers' banner. This piece of legislation was historic and groundbreaking, as the working condition of our seafarers was not captured in law, and our citizens now have legal protection once they've set foot on a ship to work. As we continue to face this pandemic, we are using the time to correct some things, one of which is the lack of safety signs. for those who head to the Keys for a swim or a trip. Along with TPDCO, we have designed safety signs for 6 popular beaches, including Port Royal and the James Bond Beach. We must inform and guide our people when the beach is reopened, and the signs should be in place informing our people about safety on the seas. Madam Speaker, Jamaica is now actively campaigning to retain our position on the International Maritime Organization Council. We will return to the polls in early December of this year to retain our place, allowing us to continue advocating for the development of uniform standards for international shipping while advancing the issues of the Caribbean region, small island developing states, and the least developed countries. The Port Security Corps, Madam Speaker, continues to play its part in the security of our nation's port by removing drugs and contraband items from cargo. We have detected some 85 pounds of ganja, 2 kilograms of cocaine, 9 magazines, and 160 rounds during personal screening over the last year. We are working to reduce our expenses by recruiting more persons so we can cut overtime payments. Madam Speaker, the Airports Authority of Jamaica continues to effectively monitor the service delivery at our airports. We have accommodated the Ministry of Health and its COVID protocols in order to protect the country. We are also continuing our airport development program of some US $89 million or 13 billion Jamaican dollars. This includes the Donald Sangster International Airport runway expansion, shoreline protection, and the expanding of the arrivals terminal. At the Norman Manley International Airport, shoreline protection works are on the way. A new police station at the Ian Fleming International Airport will soon be handed over to the police. We have before PIMSEC the Lionel Dempsey upgrade, while we have completed works at Negril, Port Antonio, and Tinson-Penn aerodromes. We are working on going to market to get a free base of operations for Ian Fleming. We need a partner who will drive the business here. In the Turks and Caicos Islands, Bahamas, and the Dominican Republic, they see an average of 30 to 40 private planes landing per day, while we see 20 to 30 landings per month at Ian Fleming. We have to move to change that, hence we are seeking a partner. Madam Speaker, the little-known NMIA, Norman Manley International Airports Company Limited, continues to work to deal with some legacy issues, and we thank the chairman and the board for their service. Additionally, Madam Speaker, we are working to increase training opportunities for Jamaicans to become pilots. We have upwards of 3,000 Jamaicans enrolled in colleges in Florida alone training as pilots. We are now working to stop that flow and train them here in Jamaica. We are working with the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority to remove some humbugs in the system, but safety concerns will not be compromised. We need general aviation to grow again. The JCCA has the highest safety record in aviation in this region, and Jamaica is the standard by which aviation safety is measured in this region. Madam Speaker, we see an average of over 11,000 flights within our flight information region per month, with an additional 2,500 landing at our airports. With the pandemic, we have seen cuts, but the numbers are coming up. We actually earn more money from the flights flying overhead than for those that land. We have overhauled our safety system and will take charge of a Doppler very high-frequency omni-range antenna later this year at a cost of approximately 600 million Jamaican dollars. We have started a discussion for a satellite-based air navigation system. This will allow us to increase the amount of traffic through our airspace, as we currently have to keep our planes 40 miles apart. But with the new system, we can keep them 5 miles apart, thus allowing more planes to pass through, resulting in increased earnings. Furthermore, because we have responsibility for aviation safety within the Northern Caribbean, this will help us to keep track of all the planes in this area. With regards to encouraging general aviation in Jamaica, we have revamped and amended the 12-year engine maintenance rule. We have increased the maximum age for commercial pilots in Jamaica from 60 to 65 years. We are also working out a system to provide titles for local planes. In this regard, as soon as we are done with the proposal, we will invite the Ministry of Finance to take the matter forward. This is vital, Madam Speaker, as banks are hesitant to provide loans for aircraft, as unlike a car, there is no title for the bank to hold on to. We have a joint task force between the Airports Authority, the Ministry, and the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, working with the American Owners and Pilots Association to make it easier to fly into Jamaica on private planes. Madam Speaker, the American Owners and Pilots Association is approximately 700,000 strong membership. Can you imagine if 10% of them decide to fly into Jamaica as they are proposing? We don't have the space to hold them. But that's a good problem to have. And as the member from Western St. Andrew said to me, maybe we'll even have to use some of the highways and toll road to park some of the planes. Because it will be approximately 65,000 planes that want to fly into us one weekend. But we are working with them because these are the kinds of problems we want to have. Madam Speaker, I take this time to congratulate the management and staff at the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority on celebrating 25 years of sterling service to Jamaica. Madam Speaker, before this slide you saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Nigeria and representative of that delegation when that historic non-stop flight came in. And they, through Earpiece, is planning 2 more flights later this year. And I want to urge a lot of my colleagues to take the return trip to Africa, because they will be offering Jamaicans to fly to Nigeria and to spend 2 weeks. And I understand that the member from South St. Catherine has already booked his ticket. And the member from South St. Andrew is right behind him to book his ticket.
One-way ticket?
Not to Nigeria. Not to Nigeria. Madam Speaker, Aerotel is another gem that you hardly hear about. This is the company that keeps communication from ground to plane safe and secure. We have upgraded our towers and installed CCTV to improve security at our sites. We have also over the year rolled out an online monitoring platform to enhance governance. Aerotel also is the owner of Cool FM, one of Jamaica's top 10 radio stations. As a matter of fact, we are number 6 in the country. We have increased our coverage for broadcast signal and created a digital online platform for on-air broadcast. As a matter of fact, the listeners of Cool today are hearing us, and we want to big up the listeners of Cool FM and the management and staff. As a result of this digital platform, we are soon to launch a digital online television station, Cool TV. So we have cooled the radio waves, and it is now time to cool TV. Madam Speaker, the innovative project we are looking forward to launching this year is a digital 2-way radio service for the people in the industry. It will be like a walkie-talkie on steroids. We hope to launch in Greater Portmore, Kingston and Montego Bay, then expand the service. This will allow airport workers and other aviation workers and businesses in general to have an encrypted, safe means of communication that is cheaper than cellular service.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to continue his speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches. I know the Minister will be very tight in completing his presentation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is that the Minister be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Dr. Guy some time.
I am giving Dr. Guy some time. Madam Speaker, may I thank you and my colleagues in the House for your courtesies. Madam Speaker, there is the troubling matter of road safety that we must address as a nation. Some 188 persons as of May 25th have died on our roads since this year. This is extremely troubling when you realize, Minister of National Security, that 48 of the 188 died during curfew hours. Crashes are up by 14% and fatalities by 15% when compared to last year. St. Catherine accounts for 20% of fatalities, Westmoreland 15% being the two highest contributors. Madam Speaker, we must slow down and wear our seatbelts. Ordinary citizens have been calling the ministry, seeking to help with this problem. And as a result of that collaboration, we are partnering with citizens to get the message out to friends, neighbors, and families. We urge others who wish to be a part of this program to contact the ministry. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Transport and Mining is embarking on a program to establish a research chair at one of our universities. The purpose is to partner with academia to improve all things transport. In order to build a modern transportation sector, research is vital. We must build new models, incorporate novel ideas, and transform the way we move people, goods, and services. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the Transport Authority. The Transport Authority, Madam Speaker, is that body that regulates the public passenger industry. The PPV sector in Jamaica is no easy work, and I thank all the persons who operate in this industry. It is tough and stressful, and it does not matter what you do, you seem always to be wrong to some people. Our taxi and bus operators and investors sometimes have a thankless job, just like a politician or a pastor. And I want to big them up for the service they provide. First, let me apologize to the sector and to the traveling public for two matters. The amendment to the Transport Authority Act as well as the regulations for the Road Traffic Act. Madam Speaker, I was confident that by now we would have had these amendments and regulations, but it is not to be. The organs of government sometimes move slowly, but I am assured by the technocrats that the amendments will be before this House before this parliamentary year is out. The second apology is that I have noted a number of videos making the rounds, some with very unprofessional conduct, allegedly by some of our employees. What I am seeing is unacceptable to this minister and to this government. Clear instructions have been given for this to cease. Members of the public and members within the public passenger industry are our customers, and respect must be shown to them at all times. Without our customers, we are nothing, no jobs. This is not the culture of the Transport Authority nor the government. This is not the culture or standard of this minister. This is no way, that was not the way our officers were trained, Madam Speaker. I therefore unreservedly apologize to those who were hurt or offended, and I ask that they proceed, if they care to the Office of the Public Defender or any other state agency to seek redress. We have launched an investigation into these incidents with a view to bringing change to the culture. Madam Speaker, the authority has also informed me that a complaints and standards department has now been established that will receive complaints of unprofessional conduct and investigate these claims. Because equally, Madam Speaker, sometimes things are not as they appear, as people edit these video clips to push an agenda and wrongfully accuse our workers. Madam Speaker, the department can be contacted at 876-383-3575 or 1-888-991-5687 or on WhatsApp at 876-551-8196. The Department of Complaints and Standard is going to be our income to protect the standard in the industry. This department will begin now and eventually roll out to be an independent body to uphold professionalism on the job. Respect must be shown at all times to our customers. We have a duty to be more professional in the discharge of our duties. Madam Speaker, the Transport Authority has also opened up the Halfway Tree Transportation Centre to rural stage carriage operators. These buses, as of Tuesday, May 25th, yesterday, this is going very well so far, and in the next phase, we will incorporate the JUTC sub-franchise holders. Madam Speaker, we can't have a lovely facility like the Halfway Tree transport sector and have it underutilized while our people are hustling and bustling to get a bus on the side of a road. Madam Speaker, I have seen in the public space a call for a fare increase. I have also heard the spokesman, the opposition spokesman, trying to turn it into a political issue. There is no need for that. And I call upon all the public transport operators to reject the insertion of partisan politics into this issue. This is an economic matter, not political. Madam Speaker, in examining all the factors driving this call, one has to be balanced. We are in the midst of a pandemic and thousands of people have lost their jobs. They are not earning. Equally, operators and investors are struggling to keep afloat in some instances, while the traveling public is not seeing an improvement in the service. We started the wearing of uniforms, and some people have stopped. Loud music and tints are coming back, and when the Transport Authority or the police try to enforce the rules, some people resist, sometimes violently. We all agree that we cannot continue like this. The public agrees, and the transport industry agrees too. Even Carlos Webster over there in Tree Hills agree, and Bulbul in Santa Cruz agree as well. Madam Speaker, I make an appeal to all motorists, but especially those in the public transport sector, to obey the law. The directives of the police and the Transport Authority officers must be obeyed. There is no need to resist arrest and fight. Cooperate, then complain. I am seeing too much resistance, and I am also urging the traveling public to encourage operators to obey the directives of an officer, record the activity, and allow the system to run its course. Remember, you know of a system to report abuse. I am sure Louis Barton from JUTC welcomes this, as well as Frederick Bryan from the Aviation Taxi Association. Madam Speaker, our operators and investors are being challenged by the stresses of today. We must salute them, for the most part adhering to the COVID protocols. Our operators in the system must be given special commendation for the role they have played in treating with the pandemic. Our drivers, whether in the private or public sector, leave home, leave their families, and in order to move the economy, put themselves at risk, as they don't know who they are picking up, nor their health status. In addition, they, more than any other sector, face another pandemic called crime. They too are at greater risk as cold-hearted criminals kidnap, beat, and murder our bus and taxi operators. Many criminals even try to pass themselves off as taxi and bus operators. Aunt Pearl from Central Manchester and Mr. Bynes from Maxfield can attest to this. Because of these risks and their dedication to the country, the government recognized the cut in their income by government edict. As after we asked them to pay for and license their vehicles to carry a certain amount of passengers, then the government, by order, instructed that they must carry fewer passengers. It is in recognition of this that we decided to offer a 30% discount on the licensing fee for route taxi and buses. This cost the suffering taxpayer some $75 million, but we believe that it was well needed. We wish we could have done more. The authority has moved over 90% of its operations online, therefore reducing the risk of the spread of the virus. We're about to launch an app that will allow our drivers to be trained via a game-based app, and we are in the final stage of development. Sister Henry's James from the Honorable Prime Minister's constituency is a believer in this, as is Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Todd. We have reformed the 8-year-old permit. This is good news to Mr. Blair of Encota and Mr. Paul McNaught, popularly known as High Grade, from the Minister of Finance's constituency. Before the changes, approximately 10% of the vehicles imported under this program ended up in the sector. Today, you qualify if you are a license holder or a badge holder for 3 years or more, as well as a recommendation from an association. That's all you need. For the first time, I am publicly inviting taxi and bus operators to apply for this benefit. Others use the industry to profit in the past. This government wants you to benefit. Madam Speaker, in fulfilling a manifesto commitment to help retool the industry, we are moving to classify routes so that the man who operates in the more rural parts of the country ought not to pay the same amount as the man in the middle of an urban center, who has a greater passenger uptake. Madam Speaker, I know that Mr. Maitland from Westmoreland or Mr. Conroy Smith from Trelawney knows exactly what I'm talking about. Today, licenses are easier to get and the turnaround time is shorter. If you doubt me, ask Stanford Stewart from St. Mary or Louis Millwood from St. Thomas. You can walk with your documents and in less than a week, you can get your renewal. He is your constituent. Contract carriage operators have been given a 100% discount on their licenses since the bulk of them carry children to school and tourists to attractions, and because of the pandemic, their earnings went to almost zero. Noel Williams from Kingston, Don Henry from Falmouth, and Michael Farrell from Otrius can attest to this. They asked for it and the government heard their plea. And David Mott and Deslan Scott and Trevor Jeffrey, Uriah Rose and even Sister Jean Lilly can attest to this. On this matter, we spent an additional $75 million. So when you add the 30% discount to the route taxes and the 100% discount to contract carriages, this government, led by the most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, understand the struggle of the operator and the investors, and that is why we assisted the industry to the tune of $150 million in this financial year. Madam Speaker, with all of that, some persons have not yet come in for their benefit. In addition, under the week here program, taxi and bus personnel were allotted a special grant of $25,000. Of the 14,000 persons who qualified, only approximately 5,000 applied and 4,000 persons got. And that is why we went ahead and implemented the $150 million program. Mr. Jaden Barnes, a.k.a. Stainless from West Rural, and Paul Blake from Portland and Simone Blake from St. Thomas know what I'm talking is true. As rough and as tough as it is for the transport operators, Madam Speaker, they are the first to tell you that the ordinary person, especially those who have lost a job, is finding it harder. We understand the everyday struggle of the ordinary man, and that is one of the reasons why I respect the workers in the transport sector. They have a compelling case for a fare increase, but equally, Madam Speaker, they themselves make a case for others who are in need, who have lost their jobs. The caring Sophia Campbell from the Route Taxi Association or Prince Hall from Exchange has a heart of gold, and like others, they know what we're saying on Pearl. You don't know her? You should be ashamed of yourself. Let others understand that we're all in this together. Sacrifices have to be made. And I appeal to all that you have a good and compelling case, but you acknowledge that others are struggling. Brother Shakes from Montego Bay understands exactly what I'm saying. To that end, we must work together. We must be patriotic. I wish others could be as considerate as my transport operators. And Watermount know that is true. Brother Clark and Plaza from Gale agree. I have engaged the Minister of Energy, and he has brought Petrojam to Cabinet because the high price of gas is hurting the sector. Minister Vaz, Speaker, our government made a commitment to the people via our manifesto. And I am proud to say that we have moved to fulfill that promise, to make the necessary legislative changes to allow the OUR to objectively determine transportation fares. That way, the power of politics or emotions will not come into play, but rather straight economic facts. We know that when a person is going to buy or invest in a vehicle, it is done on economic terms. Fares like your light bill and water bill must be determined on economic facts. We will stop the disrespect and disservice to the transport sector. This government gave a commitment during the campaign, and we intend to carry it out. Their returns must be on economic terms. It is the right thing to do, and I know that Godfrey James agrees with this. And everybody knows that Mr. James is, I am not Mr. James' favorite person. But one thing with Godfrey James, him talk truth. I am Mrs. James' favorite person though. Madam Speaker, I again extend the hand of friendship to the opposition spokesman as we continue to meet, consult, and listen. Every taxi operator, every bus operator, every busman, every bus washer, every backup man, everybody in the public passenger industry knows that this minister is not afraid to come and listen and to talk to them. I have walked and distributed masks and sanitizers. I have defended the good in the industry and condemned the bad. We have carved out a place in the curfew orders for the industry. We have placed our transport workers as priority for the vaccine. And I am sure Luciano from Arokobesa, President George, and Arthur Stennett have either gotten their vaccines or made their arrangements so to do. And I use this opportunity to urge every worker in the industry to get vaccinated. Madam Speaker, they know that this government, I am fully vaccinated, sir. Fully vaccinated. Madam Speaker, they know that this government and this minister will go to the moon and back to defend them when they are right, but will tell them bluntly when they are wrong. They know I support them, and today I ask for their understanding as we build a new relationship and a new industry. We are talking to the associations to become dealers for tires for Jamaica Ultimate Tire, because Jamaica Ultimate Tire not only retread tires, we also bring in new tires. And once they become a dealer, they can then offer tires cheaper to their members. We are encouraging associations to get a car dealership. We have already spoken to the Minister of Industry, and we are waiting on them for a car dealership license so they can bring in suitable cars for sale to their members. We are saying to them, use the takeover provision that's available now. Mr. Todd fought for that, and it's available. If you want to convert some of your facilities to service vehicles in the industry, someone should start a business to train mechanics. This industry is no longer a hustle. The public passenger service is a business, it's big business, and it's a business that must be respected and treated as such. Let's come together in unity and with strength. Partner with us to offer new services. Offer Wi-Fi and advertisement on the Wi-Fi. Start a courier service, a dispatch service. There are many opportunities with the ENDS platform. Register as a delivery service on ENDS and earn new money. If you ask Mr. William Cosley from Portmore, he can guide you through the process. There are opportunities available. The Transport Authority will waive the charge for those who have a red plate and want to get a commercial license. We'll waive all that charge for the next 60 days. Let us make use of it. Let us dream, Madam Speaker, that one day the associations can all come together and start a vehicle valuation service, or even an insurance company, or a credit union or a bank. It is not beyond us. Do not let this remain a dream, but let us work to achieve it and make these dreams a reality. Madam Speaker, as usual, I make myself available to the members of the transport sector to meet with them so that we can look at other ways and means to make this sector more profitable. NCOTA has already asked in a public statement, and I'm saying I am ready to meet with you any day and at any time. We are extending that invitation to others. Let us sit down and talk. Let us come together and reason together for the benefit of all Jamaica. Let us put our heads together to find ways to increase transport operators' income and reduce costs. We are available and ready. Just come to the table, including the opposition spokesman. Madam Speaker, it has been my privilege and honor to speak here today. And I am sure that after this speech, myself and the opposition spokesman will begin a new relationship of cooperation. I am humbled that the Prime Minister has placed me in this critical ministry. We now earn the most foreign exchange. We are COVID resilient. We are providing jobs, training, extended quarrying and mining license. We are moving to incorporate Jamaica, and we'll be offering shares in the new entity to the Jamaican people on the stock exchange. We are working with our Chinese partners at JISCO for them to come back stronger. We work with our valid partners at New Day Holdings and UC Rizal. We know that they too are facing challenges, but we are here to work with them. We are developing the castor oil sector. Madam Speaker, we are moving to correct the wrongs of the past by ensuring that families get their land titles. We are improving the conditions of work for our seafarers. We are improving the JUTC and Mobile Metro. We are improving the welfare of our port security officers. We are moving to upgrade our aerodromes now during this downtime. We are moving to improve general aviation and moving to carrying more private planes. We are bringing back the train. We have improved Cool 97 FM to being the 6th listen-to radio station in Jamaica, and we will soon launch Cool TV. We are adding a new walkie-talkie system as well as a satellite-based air navigation system. We are improving our toll roads, especially by Miami Bay. Madam Speaker, we see the pandemic as a new beginning, as a means to find new opportunities so that we, Jamaica, can build back stronger. Madam Speaker, nowhere else are we balancing lives and livelihood than in transport and mining. We're driving simulators, Wi-Fi and buses. We are looking for cheaper fuels for our buses and mining industry. Our transport operators and investors have earned new respect from the public as they face their own struggles, yet they recognize the challenges of others. Madam Speaker, we are moving ahead, but one of our greatest achievements is that we were able to begin the small positive steps to break down political barriers and to create a new normal, to break ground for a new day in doing the people's business. Madam Speaker, I have started today by being open and upfront on the portfolio. Let us show Jamaica that although we are on different sides of the political fence, we don't have to be apart. Let's do the people's business in a new, open and transparent way. Let's prove that it can be done. I am ready and waiting. Madam Speaker, I make this appeal against the background that the challenges we face as a people, and I ask the Eternal Father to teach us true respect for all and to stir response to duty's call. Truth be ours forever, Jamaica, land we love. Madam Speaker, it was indeed a privilege and a pleasure of Ms. Leela's Washbelly to speak for the 10th time in these wonderful debates, if it's so please.
Thank you, Minister Montague. House Leader. Let's move on. Our next speaker, Morris Guy, Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think it is, history has been created here today. I think it's the first time that we have had two good St. Mary men presenting in a sectoral debate on the same day. Two. We're good Samaritans, but we're good St. Mary men too. Madam Speaker, I rise today to give what happens to be my 19th presentation in this Parliament. Fully aware that we have been living through an extraordinary period in human history. Since March 10, 2020, we have been living under the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected every civilization and some. The world has experienced pandemics in the past, and locally, we have had our epidemics. Still, the challenge presented by COVID-19 crisis dwarfed anything experienced since the Spanish flu, which killed 50 million persons. Madam Speaker, I am also making this presentation knowing that due to the continued presence of the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, we live under the Disaster Risk Management Act, which contains policies and strategies to reduce and manage our exposure to the existing disaster. Therefore, today, Madam Speaker, I will express our concerns regarding the management and control of the coronavirus crisis, giving our assessment of what could have been avoided with prudent common sense actions, and offer suggestions on the way forward to save the economy and society. When I say to save the economy, Madam Speaker, I really mean to suggest ways to minimize the expense of those who live on the margins of society. Make no mistake, this crisis is still menacing our health system and our society. However, Madam Speaker, before getting into that discussion, I would like to take a few moments to acknowledge some individuals who have positively impacted my political journey and the administration of my portfolio, health and wellness. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the presence of the Almighty. I thank Him for giving me strength to serve the people of Central St. Mary, and indeed, all the people of Jamaica as the opposition spokesman on health and wellness, and in all other capacities of life. To my family, my wife Nadine and my children Maurice and Kimberly, for allowing representational politics in our family space at the dinner table and in our social engagements, and bearing with me during the demanding rigors of the campaign and ensuing political work. I also want to thank the thousands of constituents and supporters who have made it possible for me to be speaking in this debate in the capacity as Member of Parliament. Madam Speaker, the people of Central St. Mary have entrusted me with their confidence for 5 consecutive terms, and I do not intend to squander such loyalty and support. Every politician here knows the value and importance of the constituency executive, councillors, workers, volunteers, and the personal support staff who collectively keep the constituency engine churning. To them, Madam Speaker, I express my appreciation, thanks, and for their support. I want to thank the party leader and leader of the opposition, Mr. Mark Golding, for the appointment to this critical portfolio, and also for providing necessary counsel and support. Great job. Special thanks also to members of my task force who have given freely of their advice and recommendations over the period. And Madam Speaker, to the newest addition, the junior shadow spokesman on health and wellness, who is responsible for one of the recommendations I will make further in my presentation. To you, Madam Speaker, Deputy and the Speaker, for your stewardship of this Parliament, and although we have not always seen eye to eye on each matter, I commend your rulings in the main and salute your desire to make the Parliament work. Finally, I'm humbled by the genuine kindness, friendship, and outreach from colleagues on both sides of the divide to reach a consensus on the people's business. We have made many friends here in this Parliament on both sides. And we on this side will continue our advocacy for better health policy and better health care to benefit the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, in my last presentation, I spoke about the state of the health sector as we were beginning our response to the coronavirus pandemic. This year, the situation demands a candid discussion about our shortcomings in management, equipment, procedures, and protocols, many of which we highlighted throughout the year as concerns. As I prepared for this presentation and look back at the onset of the crisis and where we are today, it is clear to me that we have missed some opportunities to fix the system for the better. We have learned a lot about COVID-19 since it was declared a pandemic. Between March 2020 and today, it has mutated and continues to devastate families, communities, and societies, prompting the World Health Organization to issue its most recent warning. Despite the availability of life-saving vaccines as a necessary line of defense, the WHO says we must continue to observe the health warnings of wearing masks, practice social distancing, and wash hands frequently. Madam Speaker, it would be an understatement to categorize our health sector as being one in a state of malaise. The truth is, were it not for the hard-working health staff, the doctors, the nurses, and all the support staff in the hospitals and clinics, the system would have crashed from early last year. I commented in 2019, Madam Speaker, that dengue exposed the underbelly of the health sector. Today, 16 months after the WHO declared the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation has worsened. We will talk about some of these challenges. As I did in 2019 again, Madam Speaker, I want to salute the thousands of workers in the health sector for the excellent job they have done and continue to perform to protect the health of this nation. It was an assignment without the necessary safeguards or safety equipment for many of them, but their patriotism prevailed. On behalf of the parliamentary opposition, I extend our gratitude and thanks to all for the tremendous sacrifices made under grueling conditions to bring us through the worst phase of the pandemic thus far. Madam Speaker, the government seems to have placed its priority elsewhere. Still, we hope that the prosperity they promised would have been unveiled to improve the conditions of employment, hopefully resulting in better pay and improved terms of work for the entire sector, especially those to which a more recent promise and commitment were given as part of an incentive in the fight against COVID-19. Our hospitals have come under severe pressure as a result of the pandemic. We have seen where many hospitals have had to reduce regular services to accommodate COVID-19 patients. Many elective surgeries had to be postponed, and only emergency surgeries in the main were allowed. Many of these patients needing surgery have had to bear the prolonged agony of their illnesses simply because they had nowhere else to go, as the state had failed them. In the hospitals, many wards have been morphed into COVID-19 wards at the expense of regular illnesses, which demand hospital care. The extensive triage in the hospital emergency rooms has resulted in many persons being detoured, delayed, or left behind in procuring critical medical care. Moreover, Madam Speaker, some cases were so heart-wrenching that they brought tears to the eyes. Madam Speaker, I know it would not be a surprise to you or anyone in these halls to learn that a new norm in medical care was created due to the pandemic. Many usually admittable diagnoses were treated outside hospitals with their attendant complications instead of inpatient under controlled circumstances. Sadly, many patients died as a result of this type of care in the system. We will not forget the agonizing face of Narda McCoy as she retraced the circumstances of her daughter's death, or the tragedy of Jodian Ferron, the pregnant patient at Andrews Hospital who died after giving birth, and the many more cases that were not highlighted in the media. Madam Speaker, the sad reality is that all health centers reduced their services. Many elderly patients with diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and other chronic illnesses had their conditions worsened. Many of these elderly patients ran out of medication, experienced uncontrolled spikes in hypertension and diabetes, and were forced into hospital settings where they were exposed to an environment of long wait, sometimes lasting more than 24 hours, overcrowding with no chairs to sit on in the waiting area. Many who needed to be admitted were turned away because there were just not enough beds, and those admitted had to spend the wait in a chair or a makeshift couch, and sometimes on the ground until a bed became available. Yeah. Those in need of special treatment cannot access it as hospitals had no special medication, not to mention life-saving oxygen, which many hospitals ran out of and could not adequately treat their patients. Madam Speaker, despite the glittery picture presented on May 19, 2020 by the Minister, the health team, which has brought us through this crisis, is still at loggerheads with the government over special allowances. Still, there is more. Non-payment, delayed payment, even up to 3 months. Salary reductions which were withdrawn from health workers' pay, not paid over to financial institutions, ultimately putting the workers in jeopardy of losing their assets and creating bad credit ratings. Only 2 weeks ago, Madam Speaker, doctors were militant about a $100 million payment owed by the government, complaints about gratuity payments not received, and COVID-19 incentive allowances not honored due to bureaucratic bungling. To top it off, Madam Speaker, suppliers to these hospitals and institutions were owed over $5.8 billion by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and only $2 billion was allocated to the Ministry of Health by the Ministry of Finance to cover these outstanding amounts. Therefore, let us brace ourselves because there's going to be contention in the sector. There are also promised projects and administrative systems that had been delayed, scaled back, or abandoned either because of mismanagement, financial challenge, or were no longer politically expedient. Madam Speaker, every country is facing challenges in its way of life as a result of COVID-19. They are struggling with containing the outbreak and providing accurate data on cases and deaths. Today, globally, there are over 167 million coronavirus cases, over 3.4 million deaths, and 148 million and upward persons who have had varying degree of the virus and now reported to have recovered. In Jamaica, it's reported that there were 47,959 cases, 931 deaths, 23,986 persons have recovered, and 23,056 active cases. Every one of us in this House, Madam Speaker, knows someone in those numbers and the agony it has caused the families. Madam Speaker, I want to echo the Minister's assessment that COVID-19 remains a clear and present danger to our society, and we must continue with our vigilance. We are not out of the woods yet. It is also crucial for those scheduled to be vaccinated to do so quickly, because for the time being, this is our only line of defense. In January 2021, experts spotted a new COVID-19 variant in people from Brazil who traveled to Japan. By the end of that month, the variant was showing up in the United States. We also knew, Madam Speaker, that by late 2020 there were signs that the virus had mutated in parts of the United Kingdom and South Africa, which prompted one of our many warnings to the Minister to revisit our protocols for entering the island so that we can be protected against these strains. We were already struggling with containing the original virus, and therefore, to have a mutated strain added to it would devastate our society. Other variants of the virus were detected in other countries, including Nigeria and parts of Asia. Our warning was ignored, and by year's end, new strains of the virus had entered the island and had complicated our campaign against COVID-19. This variant appears to be more contagious than earlier strains of the virus, and they are believed to be infecting people who had already contracted COVID-19. In fact, Madam Speaker, a report from Brazil confirms that a 29-year-old woman came down with this variant after an earlier COVID-19 infection a few months earlier. Scientists estimate that these mutations could make the virus up to 70% more transmissible, which could spread much more quickly. Some research has linked this variant to a higher risk of death, but that evidence is inconclusive. But the research continues. Madam Speaker, despite all the common sense positive suggestions concerning the COVID-19 pandemic coming from the opposition, it is our view that Jamaica could have been in a better place, could have done better had some of these recommendations been accepted and implemented in a timely basis. So far, despite inadequate testing generally, we have had almost 50,000 cases with over 900 deaths. Of note, Madam Speaker, is that although we have seen the number of cases reported as going down, we have seen an increase in the number of deaths. Nowadays, when the news report on the daily clinical management summary from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, they now speak to the number of deaths first before they give the number of new cases. It might be instructive to know the true total number of deaths for Jamaica as a result of COVID-19, especially now since the World Health Organization reported on the 21st of May 2021 that the number of deaths from COVID-19 is likely to be 2 to 3 times higher than the official count worldwide. In fact, Madam Speaker, this question has been asked in this Parliament before on the Jamaica actual death figure. And all we have been told is that we have that number. So if we have that number, what is that number? We need, Madam Speaker, to hear the excess death numbers for the country. And this excess death, Madam Speaker, is the difference between the observed number of deaths in a specified period of time and the expected number of deaths in the same period. As an opposition, Madam Speaker, we have also added our voice to those in the international arena calling on rich countries to share their vaccines with countries like Jamaica. We have called for vaccine equity because the world cannot be safe if one country is not safe from COVID-19. We continue to urge the Minister to seek vaccines from the countries and manufacturers as soon as possible, because every day the concept of herd immunity stretches further and further away. Madam Speaker, we in fact led the charge in this Parliament for the government to enter into bilateral discussions and arrangements with vaccine-making countries to secure vaccines for Jamaica. The world has made significant progress in the creation, production, and availability of vaccines to fight the virus. In March 2021, Jamaica started its vaccination rollout, and this campaign continues at health centers across the island. But sadly, Madam Speaker, a growing number of our citizens remain reluctant to take the vaccine, despite the volume of evidence that benefits outweigh the risk, according to the scientific data. Madam Speaker, as the opposition, we join the government in encouraging our people to take the vaccine when the opportunity arises and when they are the ones who are due to take it. And in that regard, Madam Speaker, I also want to urge the Ministry and the Minister to develop a special message of appeal focusing on this issue of vaccine hesitancy to encourage our people to take the vaccine as soon as it is ready. Madam Speaker, I now turn to a very vexing problem for the people of Western Jamaica. And let me say plainly, we are not pleased with the debacle at Cornwall Regional Hospital. Despite the money spent on project management consultancy and changes to internal management controls, and the many assurances, allocation adjustments, and readjustments to the contract, the Cornwall Regional Hospital continues in its delay and is unlikely to meet its completion deadline of 2022-2023 financial year as mooted by the government. In his presentation last week, the Minister offered yet another assessment of the work at Cornwall Regional. He has now assured the residents of Western Jamaica that the hospital will become a source of pride. Indeed it will, Madam Speaker, but the question is when. The Minister now says, quote, "We are now entering phase 2B of the project, which will include demolition and structural repairs to floors 1 to 6 and installation of roofs on floors 3 and 6. We are also now preparing to go to the international market for a contractor for the third and final phase to complete rehabilitation and equip all 10 floors." Unquote. All fancy words, Madam Speaker, because when you look at the 2021-22 fiscal year allocation, only 1.3 has been made available for Cornwall Regional Hospital and 1.14 for the next financial year, 22-23. It is therefore our estimation that these allocations will be insufficient to do the work, and hence the completed date of 22-23 will not be met. There's plenty of blame to go around, starting with the Minister, who has given several missed deadlines and is now fearful of offering another one. The contractors are not without fault for certain aspects of the delay. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, the people of Western Jamaica suffer the indignity of poor and non-existent critical medical services. We have said it already and I'll repeat it here. Every missed deadline adds to the waste of public funds, and no one seems willing to take responsibility to abort the sewer of waste at Cornwall Regional Hospital. The parliamentary opposition has consistently promoted the importance of Cornwall Regional to the people of Western Jamaica and the nation. The work is of such importance and significance that it should have been completed much earlier. We have been given excuses such as delayed government procurement guidelines for why the work has not been completed or has been dragged out. We responded then, Madam Speaker, by saying the opposition, with the attendant oversight, would have supported sole sourcing for some of the procurement options. Madam Speaker, non-communicable diseases constitute a significant part of the morbidity of this country, with hypertension accounting for 34% of the adult population, diabetes 12%, cardiovascular disease much higher, but heart attacks at 3%, and kidney disease at 15%. We are mindful of and support the theory and practice that exercise helps to modulate these lifestyle diseases, and we commend the concept on which Jamaica Moves seek to promote. What we cannot commend, however, Madam Speaker, is the initial procurement issues associated with this program. We are, however, now heartened to hear that the Jamaica Moves intellectual property rights now rest with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and it did not cost Jamaica a penny to have that trademark owned by the ministry. To restore confidence and for full transparency, the details of this transaction need to be told to the nation, and certainly, Madam Speaker, not by a tweet. Madam Speaker, Whilst the program of exercise and lifestyle changes are taking place and will help reduce the burden of these NCDs down the road, the question is, what happens to the present? Those living in it now. What of the many NCD patients who will require kidney dialysis, renal dialysis, and unable to undergo the exercise regimen, or the facilities cannot accommodate the number of needy patients? What will happen to the thousands who cannot afford the $15,000 per session in the private sector, and that has to be performed twice weekly? Consider this, Madam Speaker. It would cost each patient about $120,000 per month. How many persons over 60 years and living on a pension can afford it? You know, Madam Speaker, I took the liberty of ascertaining the pension of a former parliamentarian. And I was able to find a minister of state who tells him that his pension amounts to about $160,000 a month. Do the maths. If that person were to pay for a monthly dialysis, there would only be $40,000 left to deal with other living expenses plus medication. Could many retired persons in the public sector afford it, Madam Speaker? And what of the elderly without a pension or other resources? Renal dialysis, Prime Minister, is a low-hanging fruit. We cannot have these persons left behind because we would be committing them to premature death. Many cannot access public facilities due to capacity issues, and they are the same ones who cannot afford private care. Madam Speaker, the Kingston Public Hospital sees approximately 2,000 renal dialysis patients per year on a 2-patient shift per day on each machine. Do you know that the wait by patients requiring dialysis at KPH is about 4 years? 4 years, Madam Speaker. And guess what? Many have died during this period waiting for acceptance into the program. At the University Hospital of the West Indies, it is around 6,000 patients per year, with another 1,000 waiting to be admitted in the program, and their wait time is around 2 years. It is hard to say, Madam Speaker, but it needs to be said. But someone has to die for a space to be created. The only other facilities in the public sector for such treatment options are situated at Cornwall Regional Hospital and Mandeville Regional Hospital. And even there, the demand way outstrips the number of places. The minister in his presentation spoke to the expansion of Spanish Town Hospital and the St. Anne's Bay Hospital, which is commendable, but made no mention of any renal dialysis facility at either of those two. Madam Speaker, this is a serious oversight and needs immediate correction. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the Public-Private Partnership for Diagnostic Imaging. This was announced last year of $1 billion that was needed and provided for the service to send public patients to certain private facilities for diagnostic imaging. And that was because the public imaging facilities had not been maintained or upgraded over the years. Despite trumpeting the numbers of persons catered to by this program during the past year by the minister, the real situation is that many private providers have denied service to the hospitals on referrals as they were owed significant amounts of money, and they fall within this $5.8 billion owed. The minister only needs to visit some of these hospitals to find out the true state of affairs and not to rely on the statistics or the narrative provided by the region. There's a usual agony out there when patients requiring the service cannot get them. This again, Madam Speaker, is another case of failure of the state. Madam Speaker, I raised the National Health Insurance Scheme in my last presentation last year as a concern after it appeared to have been abandoned. When the Minister reported on May 29, 2021, we received no positive update on the scheme except to say it is a national conversation that must be had, and he intends to lead the charge. Madam Speaker, the truth is, he has been leading that charge for more than a year with no new development, noting nothing new, zilch, as some would say, Madam Speaker. Now I want to ask the Minister directly, has the government abandoned the National Health Insurance Scheme? Madam Speaker, for a long time,
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the member to continue his presentation to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And thank you, members, and even thank you for the division. Madam Speaker, for a long time, the people of Portmore have been promised support services to enhance and enrich their life experience in their community of choice. Throughout the development of Portmore, residents have dreamed of a municipality providing a wide range of governmental and non-governmental services to remove the urgency to travel to Kingston or Spanish Town for linkages to life necessities. Portmore and Greater Portmore continue to expand. New developments are taking place. Replacing swaths of cane land to the southwest in a continued march to provide affordable housing solution, but the pace of supported services lag. With a population of well over 150,000, we believe the case or justification for a hospital to support the continuous expansion of Portmore has arrived. Big Rob, you can knock to, you know. The municipality of Portmore needs more than a health centre. Other townships with lesser population and serving smaller catchment populations have hospitals. And the solution for Portmore, Madam Speaker, cannot be the new expansion to Spanish Town Hospital, which itself has to cater for its own expanding peripheral population. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the community health aid. I'm delighted to hear the Minister on adding over 1,000 community health aides trained to conduct community interventions, provide COVID-19 outreach in communities, and to tell clients what to do to reduce risks and threats. However, Madam Speaker, something seems strange about what has really happened. The majority of the recent hires to this field of work are employed in temporary positions, initially for 2 years. Whilst most of those previously employed community health aides remain temporarily employed without any posts, and some have been in those positions for upwards of 10, 15 years with no prospects of any pension when they retire. I wonder what influenced that decision, Madam Speaker. I make no accusation, but it is clear as night follows day that something does not smell right here. These community health aides have made our public health system more robust, and we must thank them for their service because, as stated earlier, COVID-19 remains a clear and present danger. Hence, the need for them all to be given better and fairer terms of employment and security and a pension in their twilight years. Additionally, Madam Speaker, to improve our nation's health care, we need to repatriate the bulk of the community health aides to the communities where they rightly belong, as the name suggests, community health aides. For too long, these essential workers have been posted at health centres and at hospitals, but as part of our primary health care system, they have been missing. We need them back in the field, Madam Speaker, so they can interface with the many persons who are ill, who have non-communicable diseases, and to be able to afford them better health services and care for them in the community without having to resort to costly hospitalization and exacerbation of their illnesses. Madam Speaker, that will reduce the cost of hospitalization in a significant way. I now turn to the issue of nurses in this country. As a nation, we have become accustomed to training nurses only to have them leave for greener pastures, where remuneration and terms of employment are much better. We all know, Madam Speaker, that Jamaican nurses are some of the best trained in the world. They gain good experience here, and the vast majority of them are then recruited to work in the United States of America or the United Kingdom or elsewhere. The present reality, however, Madam Speaker, and currently, is that as soon as they graduate from nursing school, they are recruited. Their licensing examination fees are paid by the recruiting hospital, and they immediately travel to those jurisdictions to start working, even without the experience. The government's response to this is to recruit nurses from Cuba, Nigeria, and India. We welcome these nurses, especially from those of neighboring Cuba, who have over the years supported our health sector from as far back as in the 1970s. But foreign nurses, however, Madam Speaker, come with a premium. They receive better pay, and sometimes there are cultural differences which also require them to go through a learning curve to be able to better understand and attend to the Jamaican patients. Madam Speaker, some nurses would like to work here, serve here, care for people here, and want to stay in Jamaica. Whilst the salary is a critical component, conditions of service, security of tenure, and a pension remain attractive for many of them. The reality is that the vast majority of nurses who graduate have student loan to pay, as nursing school is no longer subsidized by the state. When they get their initial monthly salaries of around $60,000, not much is left for them to live on after student loan repayment, hence the desire to go elsewhere. Madam Speaker, what if, as a start, and Prime Minister, the government decides to absorb all student loan repayment for the graduates and bond them for a period of 3 to 4 years until the issue of pay and conditions of service can be addressed? Is it possible to give scholarships to all 500 trainees each year in the 9 recognized nursing schools and have an element of an in-service program as part of the repayment option? The cost of tuition for nursing program ranges between $2 to $2.8 million for the 4 years of study. For each year, therefore, Madam Speaker, this would cost the government a little over $1 billion. This might seem to be a large amount, but if the government can find it if it has the will. Madam Speaker, many will say that this has been tried, that is bonding, before. But we need to do something creative which will reap the benefits in these desperate times. We also need to look at the number of posts within the public sector for nurses, because many nurses are currently employed by the regional health authorities who are on contract, and those contracts can be terminated or not renewed at any time. A significant number of nurses employed by the government and work in the regional health authorities are on contract. This means that there is no security of tenure, no pension to receive at the end of their working years. And yes, although they are entitled to a gratuity, this cannot be the route for employment for such a critical cadre of the healthcare force, which has oftentimes been called upon to protect this nation. Madam Speaker, we recognize too that other healthcare workers would also seek the same treatment. However, because of the urgent nature and the acute shortages confronting the country now, nurses as a group should get priority. Madam Speaker, a study commissioned by the administration of 2007 to 2011 on the Regional Health Authority has made some interesting recommendations which have not been acted upon. One of them, Madam Speaker, spoke to the inconsistency and quality of care in each of the 4 regions. It's also said that these regions have not been uniformly treating patients as per the national imperative. With the rising number of COVID-19 deaths that the country has experienced, and the numbers coming out of Manchester over the past few weeks, one wonders whether this inordinately high number resulted from this inconsistency in the quality of care. Madam Speaker, the opposition and the vast majority of Jamaicans are concerned about the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths. Still, at the same time, we see a reduction in number of positive cases, the positivity rate going down, the R0 inching down. Why do we see fewer number of COVID-19 infections, but our deaths from COVID-19 increasing? With 146 reported so far this month, compared to 124 for the comparable period last month, but with a much lower positivity rate this month. The country therefore needs an explanation of what is happening here. And the sooner that information is given, the better it will be to restore confidence in the data that the Ministry of Health is giving out every day. Another recommendation from that study, Madam Speaker, speaks to the top heaviness of the management structure, and that significant savings could be accrued if these managerial services were repatriated to the parent ministry. This savings could then be used to employ better management and finance and better financing of the regions, as well as even supportive of that nurse program mentioned above in terms of the costs. Madam Speaker, as a responsible opposition, our work here in Parliament is to make life better for the Jamaican people. In doing so, we strive to uphold the best interests of our people. We will hold to our principle and to do whatever is necessary to protect the health of the Jamaican family. As such, Madam Speaker, we will list some measures which we believe will redound to the better health of Jamaica. We have expressed our disappointment in the overall management of COVID-19 pandemic by the administration. Throughout this experience, we have offered suggestions to many of the challenges to improve the situation and to bring our country to as close to normal as possible. Since we have concluded that despite the availability of vaccines, our protocol must remain, we will urge the government to 1. Increase the number and access to the specific and overly sensitive antigen testing kits as a deliberate strategy to lower the costs, especially for persons on low to moderate incomes. Open the market. 2. Open the market for more players to bring in these tests. Madam Speaker, as you know, it's only 2 companies that are allowed to import these tests into Jamaica. That's a question that needs to be asked. 3. Allow antigen testing to be a point-of-care test so that medical doctors and government health centers and hospitals can have access to rapid testing of clients or patients who present themselves to these facilities. 4. Maintain the requirement that all persons arriving at our port of entries have a COVID-19 negative test at most 72 hours old, whether visitors, returning nationals, or Jamaican residents, irrespective of vaccination status. 5. Introduce a new phase of messaging which is culturally appropriate and relevant to the stage of the vaccine campaign. Further, in terms of an overall improvement to the health sector, we would also urge, as a 6th recommendation, that the government establish renal dialysis facilities at each regional hospital as an initial start, and later at major Type C hospitals. By the time Jamaica moves kicks in, we might not need to go further. 7. Incentivize the nurse training program by giving scholarships, paying down the student loan for nurses, and bonding them to service. 8. Implement some of the recommendations of the Regional Health Authority study. 9. Commission the establishment of a hospital in Portmore. 10. Honor all contractual arrangements with healthcare workers and pay them on a timely basis. 11. Pay over COVID-19 allowances with dispatch. Madam Speaker, health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Interestingly, Madam Speaker, that definition has remained the same since 1940, long before the member from Southwest was born. We in the opposition subscribe and are supportive of this affirmation. We have in our many deliberations and suggestions worked towards this being attained by the people of Jamaica. We have and we will not resile from this position as we work with the government and all Jamaica to pursue equity in a health system that provides for all. Without that state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, Jamaica cannot advance on the maximum index of health from the current 29 that we currently stand at to over 90, which is desired as an optimal goal. This, Madam Speaker, is our aspiration. I thank you.
Madam Speaker, excellent presentation. Certainly the Minister of Transport and Works have transport and mining has impressed us on the tremendous work that is being done. And I also want to express our appreciation of the presentation made by opposition spokesperson on health and wellness. Madam Speaker, I now ask that the debate be suspended.
The question is that the debate now be suspended. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Minister?
Thank you. Madam Speaker, we will now take the debate to continue on the Trademarks Amendment Act 2021 and the bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Amendment Act 2021. We will start with Minister Chang, Minister of National Security.
Thank you, House Leo. Minister Chang.
Minister Chang will open, Madam Speaker, will open the debate today, but he will not close.
Madam Speaker, this bill, the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Amendment Act 2021, has been going under review for some time. The criminal justice, so I'll open the debate today and we hope we can close very quickly. The Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Act 2014 makes provision for disruption and suppression of criminal organizations and for related matters. It's also to recall that the development and adoption of the Act was in part a response to the 2013 National Security Policy, which identified activities carried out by organized criminal groups in Jamaica as Tier 1 threat to the country's security and public safety. These criminal organizations present a danger to public order, public safety, and socio-economic stability of Jamaica. The Act was therefore considered necessary to criminalize the participation in and promotion of the activities of the criminal organizations. Madam Speaker, it is desirable to restore a sense of security in the Jamaican society and strengthen the capacity of law enforcement agencies to deal with crime effectively. The latest statistics from the Jamaica Constitutional Force show that there are 379 gangs in Jamaica. Of this number, some 262 are considered active gangs, which reflects an increase of some 5% over 2019. Indeed, the gangs, in terms of sheer numbers, if not necessarily in terms of bodies, have been increasing as some of the leaders have been detained or they have lost leadership in different ways, from engagement with fellow gangs, with the police are arrested, and the big gang then splinter when leadership disappears. Madam Speaker, for the year 2020, 802 or 61% of murders were assessed to be gang-related. The JUTC have identified the source of income for most influential second-generation gangs to be through contract killing, a real danger and threat to public safety, extortion, robberies, drugs, and firearms trafficking activities. As a result, these criminal gangs continue to create mayhem in our society and are the main drivers of the elevated crime rate. The Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Act 2014, as Section 21 stipulates that the act shall be reviewed by a Joint Select Committee no later than 3 years after the date of commencement of the act. In this regard, after review and consultation, the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Amendment Act 2021 has been developed to address gaps identified by stakeholders during this operationalizations of the anti-gang law. Madam Speaker, this Honourable House will recall that the Joint Select Committee was established and commenced its deliberation on October 24, 2018 to address gaps to treat with the legislative framework. A total of 20 meetings were held, the last of which took place in January 28, 2020. So it took us a little time to get here. So we're here now. The committee embarked on public consultation, invited the public to participate through direct contact with various groups believed to have interest, as well as public notices in the Sunday Gleaner and the Sunday Observer. In addition to the Ministry of National Security, submissions were received from Jamaica Constable Force, Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, MOCA, the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions, and the Norman Manley Law School. The report of the Joint Select Committee to review and report on the Act and the recommendation therein was debated and approved in the House of Representatives on May 27, 2020, and in the Senate on June 7, 2020. This Honourable House will recall that consequent on the recommendation of the JUTC, the first Joint Select Committee, the first schedule of Interception of Communication Act was amended by way of order to include offences under the Anti-Gang Act for which an intercept warrant may be issued. An additional recommendation was for the second schedule of the Proceeds of Crime Act to be amended by way of order to include offences within the anti-gang legislation. With this amendment, offences under the Anti-Gang Act would be considered criminal lifestyle offences pursuant to Section 6 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, thereby allowing the DPP or the Financial Investigation Division to make applications for forfeiture orders in respect of any property determined to be acquired as a result of criminal lifestyle. These orders were successfully tabled and approved in the House of Representatives in July 2019. Madam Speaker, the Principal Act is being amended to reflect the recommendations from the Joint Select Committee. It should also be noted that the Ministry took into account the summary judgment from the courts on the landmark Eugene Wilson trial. In addition to the recommendation of the Joint Select Committee, after further consideration and consultation with key stakeholders involved in operational activities, some additional amendments were recommended to further strengthen the bill. These additional amendments were approved by the Legislative Committee on April 21 and subsequently by Cabinet on the 26th of April 2021. I'll outline the clause-by-clause proposed amendments, Madam Speaker, I'll now take the House through the amendment bill. As a general amendment, all reference to serious offence have been replaced with reference to applicable offence, pursuant to the recommendation of the Joint Select Committee. The use of the term applicable offence in place of serious offence would facilitate the inclusion of offences that may not be classically considered as serious offences. Further that are activities which can be used by gangs to accumulate cash, but on normal circumstances could be considered light offences, but they are part of the gang's activity. Further to this, the committee accepted a recommendation to amend the first schedule of the Act, which is entitled Serious Offences, to include simple larceny, Section 5 of this Larceny Act, and the receiving stolen property, Section 46 of the Larceny Act, since criminal gangs are known to engage in these activities as primary criminal enterprises. Right. Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act, interpretation. Section 2 of the Principal Act is amended by inserting a definition for the terms applicable offence, conveyance, and vessel. In light of the usage in the Act, it was necessary to define these words to ensure that they will be interpreted in the context intended. Consequent on the replacement of serious offence with applicable offence, the definitions of criminal activity and criminal organization were also amended in Section 2. In addition, the definition of law enforcement officers has been amended with deletion of reference to the Ireland Special Constabulary Force, having regard to this administrative merger into the Jamaica Constabulary Force. There is no longer a need to make reference to that entity. Clause 3, amendment to Section 6 of the Principal Act. Offence of being part of, participating in, or facilitating serious offence by a criminal organization. Section 6 of the Principal Act has been amended by inserting a new paragraph which empowers the court to take into consideration any symbols or markings on or in the possession of a person that indicate a link or involvement or identification with a criminal organization. This can therefore be used as a basis for determining whether a person is a part of or a participant in a criminal organization. In addition to this, the word "and" at the end of Section 6, bracket 3F, has been deleted. This amendment is aimed at removing any uncertainty concerning whether the provision must be applied conjunctively. In this regard, any of the factors listed at Section 6 may be taken into account by the court in determining if a person is part of a criminal organization. Clause 4 and 5, amendment to Section 7, 8 of the Principal Act, offence of leadership of criminal organization, an offence of providing a benefit to or obtaining a benefit from a criminal organization. Similar to the amendment of Section 6, 3F, both Section 7.3b and 8.4a have been amended by removing the word "and," which appears at the end of the respective paragraph to make the list of factors the court takes into account read disjunctively. Clause 6, insertion of the new sections 8a and 8b. The Principal Act has been amended by insertion next after Section 8, a new Section 8a. This new Section 8 section provides for the offence of using a premises or conveyance for purposes which constitute an offence under this Act. It will be recalled that the Joint Select Committee recommended the creation of a new offence for using any premises in furtherance of gang activity, similar to what obtained in Section 5, the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Special Provision Act, that is the anti-lotto gang, lotto scamming legislation. The intention for the introduction of this new offence is to capture those persons who knowingly cause or permit the use of a conveyance or premises for the commission of an applicable offence. The security forces have highlighted that in many instances, criminal organizations have utilized premises and conveyances to conduct their criminal operations. These premises and conveyances are a critical part of day-to-day operations of a criminal enterprise, and the facilitators must therefore be targeted. The new Section 8b, similar to Section 15 of the Law Reform Fraudulent Transactions Special Provisions Act, provides direction to the court on how to treat with the fact of possession or property not accounted for during a trial for an offence under the Act. Clause 8, amendment to Section 11 of the Principal Act, offence of professing to be part of a participant in a criminal organization to obtain benefit Section 11 of the Principal Act was deleted and substituted with a more expanded provision. This new provision sets out the circumstances within which the offence of professing to be part of or a participant in a criminal organization to obtain a benefit can be committed. If a person professes, whether by statement or suggestion, to be acting on behalf of or on the instruction of a criminal organization, he would not be captured within the provision. This section reads, a person shall not, in order to gain a benefit, profess to be part of or a participant in a criminal organization or be acting on behalf of or on the instruction of a criminal organization, whether by A, telling anyone that the person is a part of or a participant in a criminal organization or is acting on behalf of or on the instruction of a criminal organization, or otherwise suggesting to anyone that the person is a part of or a participant in a criminal organization or is acting on behalf of or on the instruction of a criminal organization. Clause 9's amendment to Section 15 of the Principal Act, Offences and Penalties. As agreed at the Joint Select Committee, Section 15, Offences and Penalties, second schedule, is amended as subsection 2 by expanding the list of aggravating factors that should be considered at the point of sentencing a person for the commission of offence under the Act. Some of these aggravating factors include in an offence under Section 4, which is the offence of recruitment of a child to a criminal organization involving aiding, abetting, inciting, or inducing an act of violence as part of the process of recruitment. If the commission of an offence under the Act is done whilst being in possession of any item of dress, designation, or description of a law enforcement officer. Recruiting a child on the premises or grounds of or within 300 meters of a school or any other educational institutions. This will be a serious aggravating factor. If an offence under Section 12 is committed against a child, involves aiding, abetting, inciting, or inducing an act of violence in order to prevent or obstruct a person from ceasing to be part of a criminal organization or to provide a benefit to a criminal organization. It should be noted that the creation of an offence at the new Section 8A, or using premises or conveyance for a purpose which constitute an offence under the Act, this new Section 8A was also included in the list of sections which, if committed by a foreign national, would be treated as an aggravating factor. The inclusion of this provision, Madam Speaker, is to account for foreign criminal actors involved in transnational organization, as noted in national security policy. If organized crime is left unchecked, the very survival of the state is at risk. But transnational agents and activity is a major part of gang activity in Jamaica, involving contraband trading in drugs, gun running, and of course trafficking in person. Clause 10, amendment of Section 17 of the Principal Act. Third, trial procedure. Section 17 of the Principal Act is amended by replacing the marginal law trial procedure with mode of proceeding. It will be recalled that the committee considered the matter of witness protection and the need to ensure the protection of the identity of such persons before, during, and after trial. In this regard, the committee recommended that Section 17(2) be expanded to allow for the protection of witnesses involved in cases being prosecuted under the Act before, during, and after trial. The section is amended in subsection 2 by deleting the words "hearing a case in the exercise of its jurisdiction under this Act" may. The section in part now reads 17(2). In the interest of administration of justice, public safety, public order, or public morality, a court that has jurisdiction to hear any case under this Act may at any stage before or during trial, and with effect for such duration as the court thinks fit, including any period of time after the conclusion of the trial, direct that the identity of any person, including a witness in the case, shall be protected in the manner specified by the court. The penalty provision of Section 17(4)(a) for publishing any information in contravention of a court's direction was also amended to increase the monetary penalty from $1 million to $3 million. the current fine was not considered a sufficient deterrent, especially given the nature of the offence. Amendment to the first schedule, serious offences, that's clause 11. The first schedule of the Act, which outlines what is now the applicable offences, has been amended by including reference to Section 48, offences in connection with lotteries, 49A, licensing of lottery agent, 56, offences in relation to pick-a-pow and drop-on of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act. The rationale for the inclusion of these sections comes from the current trend of less organized criminal networks orchestrating informal lotteries and using the proceeds from these activities as a source of income. The introduction of these provisions will also serve to decrease the profitability of these activities. Reference to additional sections 6, 7, 15, 18, 19, 34, 35, 38, and 41 of the last Act has also been included. The offences under these sections, for example, larceny of cattle and larceny from the person, have been highlighted as commonplace activities of criminal gangs. Several of these gangs have pinned their survival and financial gains on committing many of these offences, including robberies and predel larceny, for the continuation of their criminal enterprises. Considering this inclusion of these provisions was deemed necessary at this time. Indeed, what is called a food for guns trade exists between us and one of our neighboring islands. The first schedule was further amended with the inclusion of Section 3 of the Explosives Control of Manufacture Act, no explosives to be manufactured without license. Section 14 of the Gunpowder and Explosive Act, Sections 29 and 30 of the Offences Against the Persons Act, and Section 10 and 11 of the Malicious Injuries Property Act. It has been noted that these types of activities are carried out by criminal groups. The inclusion of these provisions stems from an incident in 2017 in the parish of St. Anne, where fugitives utilized hand grenades to aid in their challenge to law enforcement personnel. This incident resulted in the injury of a member of the law enforcement response team and highlighted the brazen use of explosives by criminal organizations. On the recommendation of the DPP, it was deemed appropriate for these provisions to be included in the anti-gang legislation. The first schedule was also amended to make reference to the Fisheries Act 2018. Since the fishing industry was repealed and replaced by an act just last year, I think. As such, the provisions listed in the Principal Act are no longer valid. In light of this, the bill takes into account offences outlined in the new Fisheries Act. Clause 12, amendment to the second schedule to Principal Act. The second schedule, offences and penalties, has been amended to take into account the additional new offences. The penalty for the new offence created under the new Section 8A, offence of knowingly causing or knowingly permitting premises or conveyance to be used for any purpose which constitute an offence under this Act, is an applicable penalty of a fine or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 15 years or on conviction and indictment in a circuit court. Clause 13 amendment of the Constabulary Force Act. The Constabulary Force Act has been consequentially amended to include a new Section 17A to allow for the application to a justice of the peace for a warrant authorizing a search of a building, receptacle or place specified in the warrant, and seizure of any items specified in such warrant. The Constabulary Force Act is also amended in Section 2 by inserting definitions for the terms conveyance and vessel. In light of their usage in the new Section 17A, it is deemed necessary to define the terms to set the context in which they are intended to be used. It should be noted that the Joint Select Committee report prescribed that only a constable named in a warrant could give effect to the warrant. It was subsequently recommended, however, that this limitation be removed as it may pose operational challenges to the work of the JCF. There may be instances where the constable named in the warrant cannot give effect to the warrant. In such a case, the function of the JCF would be hindered. Additionally, it is noted that in practice, the constable is not named in the warrant. In light of this, the prescription has been removed from the reformulated provision. The new 17A(6) provides that where a constable seizes anything under this section, he shall, as soon as reasonably practicable, if satisfied that there is a dispute as to the person lawfully entitled to the possession of the thing, apply to a judge of a parish court for an order under subsection A, subsection 8A or C. This provision is currently drafted in the bill, does not take into account a situation where the thing is required for purposes of an investigation or any court proceedings in respect of an offence, regardless of whether there is a dispute as to who is entitled to it. Having regard to the constable's power under common law, it is proposed that a new subparagraph be included, which would be in effect, provided that where the thing is needed for the purpose of an investigation, any court proceeding, the constable does not have to return the thing or apply to the court for an order. In this regard, it is recommended by the JCF that section 17A(6)(b) be redrafted to reflect 6. Where a constable has seized anything under this section, the constable shall leave a notice in the prescribed form of the seizure of the premises, receptacle, conveyance, or place, as the case may be, from which the thing was seized, and as soon as reasonably practicable, if satisfied that 1. There is a dispute as to the person lawfully entitled to the possession of the thing, and 2. The continued detention of the thing is seized is not required for the purpose of an investigation or any court proceedings in respect of the commission of an offence against any law. Apply to a judge of a parish court for an order under subsection 8A or C. This proposed amendment is being put forward for the approval of the House. As it concerns the section 17A(7) and 17A(11), it is noted that in Joint Select Committee report, a person claiming to be lawfully entitled to possession of a thing seized was only required to give 3 days' notice of his intention to apply to the courts for its return. After further consultation with the DPP and the JCF, it was gleaned that 3 days was insufficient time for the DPP to prepare its response to the application. As such, in keeping with timeliness, use the civil procedure rules requirement as contained in this bill is at a minimum 7 days' notice. An additional provision included in this new 17A(12), which empowers a constable executing the relevant warrant to search any person found on the location which is the subject of the warrant. The inclusion of this provision aligns with similar search warrant provisions in legislation such as Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency Act 2018, 7th Schedule. For practical application, it is considered useful and necessary to empower the constables to search persons present at a place, as in some instances, the evidence may be on the individual. Clause 14, amendment of the Criminal Justice Administration Act to include the new section 39A. This new section 39A introduced the offence of tipping off and establishes the circumstances within which a person would not have been found to have committed the offence. A person commits the offence if knowing or having reasonable grounds to believe that an investigation is being conducted or about to be conducted in respect of any offence. Under any law, he discloses information relating to the investigation to another person. It should be noted that Section 39A differs from the formulation that was contained in the Joint Select report. For Section 39A(2)(a), the provision now accounts for the fact that disclosure may be required by an order of the court or by any other piece of legislation, The expanded provision follows 39A(1), which speaks to a disclosure regarding an investigation in respect of an offence under any law. Section 39A(2)(a) therefore had to reflect in a more general way the varied treatment of protected disclosure in all applicable laws. In relation to Section 39A(2)(b), the proviso that the disclosure would not be protected if it were made with the intention of furthering a criminal purpose was included to ensure the provision could not be interpreted as an absolute protection to a disclosure made to or by an attorney at law. This reformulated provision accords with Section 97(3) and 1044 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. Clause 14 includes of the new Section 39B in the Criminal Justice Administration Act. The new Section 39B introduces the offence of falsifying, concealing, destroying, or otherwise disposing of documents or items relevant to an investigation. This offence targets activities that seek to thwart and derail criminal investigation. The applicable penalty would be to a fine not exceeding $5 million or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years, or to both such fine and imprisonment at the parish court level, and at the circuit court to a fine or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years, or to both such fine and imprisonment. There were also consequential amendments to the Law Reform Fraudulent Transactions Special Provisions Act, Offence Against the Persons Act, and the Trafficking Persons Prevention, Suppression and Punishment Act to amend the definition of criminal organization by replacing serious offences with applicable offence. This is in keeping with the amendment made to the term in the Criminal Justice Suppression Criminal Organization Act. Madam Speaker, thank you, and look forward to the participation of my members as we seek to support the bill as we go forward. But amendments required to ensure that this bill can, in fact, be operationalized in a very more effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Minister for bringing this bill to amend the anti-gang legislation, the formal name of which, well, the short title, which is the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act. And this bill is seeking to make some amendments to that act. And perhaps more importantly, actually, is seeking to make some amendments to other important pieces of law enforcement legislation which the Joint Select Committee had the opportunity to review as part of the exercise of reviewing the anti-gang legislation. So the amendments to the Constabulary Force Act and to the Trafficking Persons, the lot of scamming legislation, and the Offence Against the Person Act are all important as well. These amendments have arisen out of what I would call a statutory review of the anti-gang legislation. When we passed the anti-gang legislation back in 2014 or whenever it was, 14, it had a provision in it, as is fairly common nowadays, requiring that Parliament review the Act some years after it's brought into effect. Usually, those review provisions require the review to be done within 3 years, sometimes 5 years, and so on. Anyway, that provision was in the anti-gang legislation, and although Parliament was a bit dilatory in giving effect to it because the review was outside of the period specified, it was nonetheless useful to have that process start, and we participated in it in the usual bipartisan spirit of trying to improve our legislation and tackle the evils of criminal violence that afflict the nation. The original act was groundbreaking in that it sought to tackle the phenomenon of criminal organizations and to criminalize being part of, joining, furthering the cause of, facilitating criminal organizations. And because it is well recognized that criminal organizations are responsible for a significant part of the criminal violence, especially murders in the country, that legislation was important and timely when it was passed. It was also groundbreaking because the drafting style of the provisions, for the most part, is extremely simple. it is really written in plain English for the most part. Short sentences, short provisions, other than the actual definition of a criminal organization, which is a fairly substantive definition. But apart from that definition, the Act itself is in, I think, very clear terms. It took a while, of course, for the law enforcement and prosecutorial agencies of the state to come to terms with it, to learn it, to digest it, to operationalize it. And, you know, the media was from time to time, I think, critical of the fact that the legislation hadn't resulted in convictions and so on. There were a couple of convictions from guilty pleas of persons who pleaded guilty to offenses under the Act. But then after that, we had some substantial prosecutions which took place. And I think not that long ago, 6 months maybe, we had the first major convictions under the of a criminal organization or members thereof. A successful prosecution of that case, which led to convictions and sentences for the perpetrators of the violence that had been emanating from that criminal enterprise. And I think that was a landmark case because we'd had a case before which had fallen apart, mainly because the evidence had relied on one particular witness, and that didn't work out. But there's no doubt that for the anti-gang legislation to be effective, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, MOCA, the DPP's office have to collaborate extensively to make it work. And they have to use techniques, forensic techniques, that take into account the propensity of criminal organizations to use extreme violence to further their interests, to protect their interests, and to make it as difficult as possible for them to be held accountable. So evidence like DNA evidence, witness protection under the witness protection program, these are all issues that came up and were discussed extensively in the Joint Select Committee. So, Madam Speaker, the first point to note in this is that the amendment bill does not trouble the definition of a criminal organization in the Principal Act. And that is really the fulcrum of the Act. Everything in the Act turns on that definition, and that remains untouched by the amendment bill. And I think largely because the prosecutions which have taken place, including the one I referred to, which led to a successful conviction of a number of gang members in a case that was tried by the eminent Chief Justice of the country, established, I think, the workability of the definition, and the jurisprudence coming out of that case will help future prosecutions as well. So I think that's a very important thing to note in discussing this amending bill. One thing that was done, which has really changed the nature of the legislation, is that whereas under the Principal Act when passed, criminal organizations were organizations of 3 or more persons that come together for the purpose of committing serious offenses. And serious offenses were, it was a defined term, and there was a list of offenses in a schedule to the Act which are deemed to be serious offenses. That concept has been changed in this amending bill. And we no longer have the use of the concept of serious offenses. They've changed the nomenclature to applicable offense or offenses, taking out the idea that the offense has to be a serious one. I must say I had some discomfort with that in the Joint Select Committee, because essentially what it does is that it can have the result that persons who come together in groups to commit relatively trivial offenses can be prosecuted under the anti-gang legislation. Now, the anti-gang legislation is not designed for tackling groups of youngsters, say, who may be pickpockets or gambling offenses in their community, illegal gambling, that kind of thing. And the anti-gang legislation carries potentially very heavy penalties in it. The upper limits of the sentences that can be imposed if you're convicted under this legislation are high. So I have some concerns, which I'll mention more specifically when I get there, about that particular change, because I think that now it's going to put a tremendous onus on the DPP's office in particular to ensure that the legislation is used for its original purpose, which is to tackle organized crime as we understand it, as opposed to persons who may be operating in groups to carry out relatively minor offenses. Because proportionality in how we treat with people in the criminal justice system is very important. Although the public doesn't always embrace that concept, but it is very important that persons who commit minor offenses don't get punished in the same way as persons who commit very serious offenses. And that is a concern that I have. The Minister has gone through the bill clause by clause, and I don't propose to do that, but I do have a few comments on some of the specific provisions, Minister, and I just want to bring them to your attention so you can consider them, which is why I wanted to speak today, because I understand you're not planning to close the debate today. Good. So that would give you a little time to digest what I have to say. And the first point I wish to make on a specific clause is on page 5 of the bill. And it is clause 9 of the bill, which amends section 15 of the Principal Act. And what it does is that it deletes subsection 2, 15.2, and inserts a new 15.2 in its place. And I'm looking at paragraph E in particular. And it says that an offense under section 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8A, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14 is committed by a person who is at the time of the commission offense not a citizen of Jamaica. And what I believe that is doing, you have to look back at the Principal Act in tandem with this to understand how it works. But I believe that it makes it an aggravating factor in sentencing. Yeah. And this was a matter that was discussed in the Joint Select Committee, because the idea that we were focused on was where persons come here from other countries because they are affiliated with or working with local criminal organizations and maybe worsen their activities, facilitate their activities through their expertise or their network or their reach. And we want to really discourage, through our law, persons thinking that they can come into Jamaica to do that. But the concern I have is focusing on the citizenship of the person. The reason being that we have a lot of people who are living in Jamaica who may not be citizens of Jamaica because we have such a big diaspora, and persons go away, persons come back, and so on. You have a lot of children of Jamaicans who are not Jamaican citizens who are living here. We don't want to treat them as being subject to these aggravating factors necessarily. Residency is what I was thinking we'd have focused on. If somebody is not lawfully and ordinarily resident here, then that would be the factor that would be the aggravating factor rather than citizenship. It's just something, it occurred to me just because of the reality of how our population moves around. Yeah. Something to think about, Minister. Yeah. In clause 11 of the bill, which amends the first schedule, and this is where what was the list of serious offenses and has been expanded to be a list of applicable offences is. I'm going to give you a few of them which I thought they give me concern. One is, for example, item 12, the new item 12, which is replacing the old one, and talks about an offence under the Fisheries Act, namely Section 25, fishing without a license or permit. You know, I can well see, especially as we, and Minister of Agriculture, I'm glad to see you looking at me, because, you know, we have modernized the fishing legislation, and we've stepped up the enforcement provisions, the penalties in it, and so on. I can well see the situation, and the licensing regime as well, requiring licensing and so on. Now, you know, there will be instances where persons are fishing without a license, and that's wrong, and that's an offence under the Act, in certain circumstances anyway. And the fisheries legislation addresses that directly and has been the subject of a modernized approach in how you deal with that. Now what we're doing is we're superimposing on that the anti-gang law, which is going to take the offence of fishing without a license to a whole new realm if it is being done by 3 or more persons in a boat. And I can just see that, you know, persons who, in the nature of our informal economy and so on, yes, they should be fishing, they should have their license if they're fishing, but we deal with that in our fisheries legislation. To go superimpose on that a whole new elevated set of potential penalties on them under anti-gang legislation seems to me overkill. A similar point I would make in relation to item 17, which is simple larceny now becoming an applicable offence for the purposes of the anti-gang legislation. Simple larceny is petty theft, thieving, you know, smaller items, not typically something which would ever result in long periods of incarceration if you were successfully prosecuted and convicted for simple larceny. Now, if 3 or more man and woman youths get involved in a little hanky-panky, instead of being dealt with in the parish court, and maybe it's the first offence, who knows, given a suspended sentence or a community service order or something, bam, anti-gang can lick them now. And that now is a whole new realm, 25 years, up to, or 15 to 20, depending on the specific offence under the Act. So, you know, I'm really concerned about throwing into the anti-gang net some of these relatively minor offences. Burglary is another one. Burglary is non-violent theft of somebody's home or property. Breaking, you know, burglary as opposed to robbery, which is different. Robbery involves violence, so there's perceived threat of violence. Burglary is a non-violent offence, and to bring that into the anti-gang, I think we're going a bit too far. So those are some of the concerns I have about the change to the first schedule. Minister, I will move on to, I noticed and this rather confused me, Minister, there's an amendment sheet that was circulated last week, and it relates to clause 13 of the bill and sets out a different amendment to the bill, which is itself an amending bill. But when I read the proposed amendment, it seems identical to what's in the printed bill that I was working from. So I didn't really understand. I don't know if this was something that was in the original long form that you had tabled, and then when the printing bill was handed out, the printed bill was handed out here, whether that it's fixed something, which it really shouldn't, by the way. But I don't know if that was why what I have seems to be identical to what's in the sheet. But maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but I would ask that you have a look at that, please, Minister. Because I'm not sure why we need the amendment here if it's already in the text of the bill. The other point I wanted to focus on now relates to this new section 17A of the Constabulary Force Act, which is a general power of search and seizure. Now, this is important to recognize. what we have done, how this has been approached in the past, has been the powers of seizure and search and seizure, have been put into specific pieces of legislation on a case-by-case basis where that is considered to be necessary from a law enforcement point of view. What this is going to be doing is essentially generalizing those powers of seizure and search and seizure, as long as there is a warrant. And this is something that I think is necessary because for example, the DPP's submissions, if I recall them correctly, to the Joint Select Committee was that the anti-gang legislation should have had those provisions in it. In the course of the discussion in the Senate, we said, well, it wasn't in it because the assumption was that these were general powers that the police already enjoy. And to the extent that they don't have it, they should. So this is what this is trying to address here now. But I just want to make one comment, and this is in relation to subsection 8. And it's a mandatory provision because it says in 8, on an application under subsection 6b or 7 as the case may be, the judge shall. And when I look at C, subsection C, it says, where the person who is lawfully entitled to possession of the thing is not known, and the judge is not satisfied that the detention of the thing is required for the purpose of an investigation or any court proceedings in respect of the commission of an offence against any law, the judge shall order that thing to be forfeited to the government. Now, forfeiture for something which is not required for the purpose of investigation, is not required for the purpose of court proceedings, and where you're not sure, you don't know who owns this thing, seems extreme to me. And I'm not sure why we have this automatic or mandatory forfeiture in those circumstances. I'm asking you, please, to look again at 8C, Minister. Normally, forfeiture arises where somebody has been convicted and the property is criminal property and it can be forfeited to the government, to the Crown. But this is not property that has been the subject of any crime resulting in a conviction. This is something that has been seized by a constable with a warrant under the general powers of seizure and search that this Act is now introducing. So to go have C which says that, and it's mandatory, the judge shall order the thing to be forfeited to the government, just seems, I think, very difficult to fathom. The other point I want to make in this section, and this relates to 11, subsection 11, which is on page 15. It says that where anything is seized, is detained under this section, a judge of a parish court may, on application by a person who has an interest in the thing detained, after giving 7 days clear notice to the DPP, order that the applicant be permitted to examine the thing seized and impose such terms and conditions as appear to the judge to be necessary or desirable to ensure that the thing is safeguarded and preserved for the purposes for which it is required. But what I was expecting to see, which I didn't see there, is what happens if some financial institution or other creditor has a security interest in that asset. They may be looking at that as their collateral for having extended credit, and normally that is a base upon which they can apply to have it released to them, rather than subject to any kind of forfeiture, for example. It didn't seem to me that this adequately protected the interests of secured creditors. 11, yes. Yes. It didn't seem to me that it... And there are examples in other acts that we have where provisions do sufficiently address that. 11 is not itself a forfeiture provision, but it's a provision that allows third-party interests to be taken into account, but it doesn't seem to be focused on that type of third-party interest, which is normally the one, certainly one that's normally up front and center when you're thinking about a provision like this. So I would ask you to have a look at that. Moving to page 16 of the bill, and this is now an amendment to the Criminal Justice Administration Act, and is an important new provision called tipping off. And this is a Serious thing. Because, and it's in very simple terms, members. 39A, subsection 1 of the Criminal Justice Administration Act says, a person commits an offense if, knowing or having reasonable grounds to believe that an investigation is being conducted or about to be conducted in respect of an offense under any law, if in those circumstances the person discloses information or any other matter relating to the investigation to another person. This is a general thing that says, if you know that there's an investigation about to start or underway, you cannot tell anybody about that. If you do so, that's a criminal offense. It's a serious thing. One thing I wasn't sure, though, the formulation of the words under any law, does that include the common law? Or does that mean under any statute law? Because when we talk about, normally, the general law obviously includes the common law, but we don't really normally speak in terms of the common law in that way. I wasn't sure. Several important offenses are common law offenses. Some of the very serious offenses are common law offenses still. So I think that ought to be wide enough to include the common law, and perhaps that could be something that the technical team could just quickly look at and decide if they're comfortable with it or if they think it ought to be elucidated. The other point I want to make in relation to this another important new offense in the Criminal Justice Administration Act is 39B. The under any law point is there as well in subsection 1, but I'm focused now on subsection 2. It says, one is dealing with a person who, knowing or having reasonable grounds to believe that an investigation is being conducted or about to be conducted in respect of an offense under any law. Person falsifies, conceals, destroys, or otherwise disposes of or causes or permits the falsification, concealment, destruction, disposal of documents or items that are relevant to the investigation. Two questions there quickly arise. So that is now an offense, destroying evidence essentially. The question I have is, first of all, are documents defined in the Criminal Justice Administration Act? Because, for example, I think certainly the Anti-Gang Act itself, and perhaps, I don't have it before me, but I know some of the legislation in recent times have a simple definition of document, which is wide enough to include anything in readable form. It doesn't have to be paper, it can be electronic and so on. I'm not sure that that is in the Criminal Justice Administration Act, so I was just flagging it, because I think it ought to be wide enough to cover that. But the other point I want to make, and so I'm saying they should look at whether they should include a definition of document in the Criminal Justice Administration Act, having used it in 39B here. Yes, I think if they think that it ought to be there, having thought about it, I'm just flagging it that I saw the word document used, and I'm not aware that there is a definition or a modern definition, because the Criminal Justice Administration Act is not a relatively modern statute, although it's been amended in recent times, several times. But the point I was actually planning to make is in subsection 2. It says a person does not commit an offense under subsection 1, which is falsifying or destroying or concealing evidence, if the person does not know or suspect, and it's the words or suspect I'm looking at, because as formulated there, it would be a subjective formulation. You'd have to prove whether or not they suspected. Whereas normally I think that should be on an objective basis, which would normally use the words have reason to suspect. So it doesn't really matter what they actually suspected. It's whether or not the objective circumstances were such that they ought to have had reason to suspect that the documents or items are relevant to the investigation. I think it ought to be formulated in that objective way rather than a way that's subjective sounding. So, Minister, those are my comments on the bill. I look forward to seeing some more legislation coming here. In the Joint Select Committee, I spoke to the importance, for example, of having a intelligence gathering law that allows persons who are essentially suspects to be investigated through a process which goes to court to get the necessary orders, but doesn't require that to be a fragmenting process. So you have to go under this piece of legislation for intercepts and that piece of legislation for bank information and this piece of legislation to ensure if they're crossing borders, there must be a notification. But rather you could have one proceeding that would give you the full gamut, so to speak, of tools of intelligence gathering that are needed to investigate and ultimately prosecute these cases. So I look forward to seeing something along those lines coming here soon, Minister. One wishes that this type of legislation wasn't necessary, but the reality of Jamaica is that we have a problem with criminal organizations. Some of them are notorious. Some of them are not so well known to all of us, but are well known in the communities in which they operate. What I think is going to be important, if we go down this route, is that the prosecutorial authorities don't allow this to be used in a sledgehammer to crack a nut. In other words, don't allow it to be used to prosecute cases which it was never intended to deal with, and situations it was never intended to deal with, because the penalties are severe, potentially, and I'm sure the sentencing guidelines around this act would take into account the phenomenon of criminal organizations and would have a range which would be fairly heavy. So we don't want it to be applied in a way which would be oppressive in cases where persons are really not dealing with the kind of thing that the legislation was designed to deal with. Apart from that, Minister, what we now need to see happen is the witness protection program needs to be revisited, I think, strengthened, because we know that that is going to be critical to the effective fight against some of the criminal elements that we have, given the fact that we know that they are not perturbed at all about taking up lives to ensure that they are not successfully held to account for their actions and so on. So the witness protection system needs to be adequately resourced, but also needs to be facilitated so that persons who need that help can access it, and that it works well. It's been around for a while now, and we felt that given that at least one of the cases had not been successfully prosecuted because of a problem that a key witness had, and their reluctance to go into the program, we have to look and ensure that the witness protection program is fit for purpose. But Minister, I think this is progress, and I thank you for bringing the bill to the House. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. My understanding, House
Madam
Leader,
Speaker, I now ask that the debate on the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Amendment Act be suspended.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, as there is no further business contemplated for today, I now ask that the House be adjourned to Tuesday, June 1 at 2 p.m.
The House is adjourned, and next set for Tuesday. What date is next Tuesday? Tuesday, June 1, 2021. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.